This is Jeff Shine, the voice of Carlos in Resident Evil 3, and you're listening to the Let's Talk Resident Evil podcast.
What is going on, everyone? Anthony here, and welcome back to another episode of the Let's Talk Resident Evil podcast. And this is the first episode of 2023. A lot of stuff that is going on this year with Resident Evil 4. A bunch of survival horror stuff is coming out. We got RE4 remake news happening. We got Resident Evil CGI film Resident Evil Death Island announced. So there's been a lot of stuff happening. And of course, I do have a episode that is going to be coming out shortly after this that is going to be discussing more of what we just talked about in some of the videos that were like breakdowns and stuff going over all the new stuff. I'm going to have a whole episode discussing all the recent stuff in just kind of one big episode podcast where I'm kind of discussing it in front of the camera like this and giving you my overall thoughts, because on the channel, I'm pretty much caught up with everything that's been talked about, but I wanted to wait until all this stuff kind of simmered down a bit and I can actually do an episode talking about the Resident Evil 4 and Death Island and pretty much all the RE stuff up to date. So that will be coming out after this. Now with today's episode, this is going to be my chat with Perry. And you might know him from the Game Complainers podcast that I co-host every Wednesday night at 10:30 over on youtube.com/thegamecomplainers. I've almost been a part of that show for 10 years this year, which is nuts. But I've been friends with Perry even longer than that. So this was a really fun episode to record and just to have a good conversation with him. And it was the first time he was on the show since the Resident Evil 2 remake discussion and show. So that's been a while, and it was really cool to always, go back and kind of discuss Resident Evil in the 90s, talk about how it was back then, the difference of how gaming was back then compared to how it is now. And it was always fun to kind of go back and be nostalgic about it. So it's a bit of a nostalgia episode with this one, and it was cool to chat it up with Perry, and I'm sure we'll have him back on really soon. And thank you for waiting for this one. Thank you for waiting for me to get the podcast rolling this year. And there's going to be a lot of stuff to discuss, and I'm going to have even more people on as the year goes on, and just to make it interesting. 2022 was definitely a test for the LTRE podcast, doing different style of episodes, having people on for interviews, discussions, and I want to continue that with 2023 and improve the show even more, and even have more coverage on Resident Evil stuff that we're going to be seeing coming up soon. I mean, it's midway through February. March is right here. Death Island's coming out in the summer, apparently. We don't really have a date locked down for that yet, but that's happening, and who knows, maybe even RE9 can be announced at E3 in June. There's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about. So obviously, if you're new, thank you for coming on the channel and staying on for the support for the live streams and the videos. And this is it. I mean, this is going to be a big year for Resident Evil. And I'm this close, guys, this close to 20K. So if you're new here, subscribe, drop a like, hang out in the community, comment, jump in the live chat on the premiere, whatever you want to do. That really helps me out a lot. And of course, the channel just recently turned 13 the past week. So 13 years of doing this. It's kind of crazy how fast the time flies, but it's really, really crazy that the community has stayed together for this long with something that we're all passionate about and something that we all love, like Resident Evil, which is turning 27 this year. And there's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about this 27th year of Resident Evil. So stay tuned for that. There's going to be more shows, more live streams and stuff leading up to the road to Resident Evil 4 Remake. So stay tuned, and I hope everyone enjoys this episode with Perry. Let's do this. What is going on, everyone? Anthony here, and welcome back to another episode of the Let's Talk Resident Evil podcast. And I'm here with a special guest. You've seen him before. I've been doing Game Complainers with him for almost 10 years now on the Game Complainers podcast every Wednesday night. It's Perry. Welcome back to the show, man.
What's going on?
So you haven't been on the show in a couple years, so I've only really talked to you about the franchise on the Game Complainer show when there's been news and stuff to kind of report on. So, but I kind of wanted to take it back because you've been on the show way back in the beginning when, the show started. But we actually met through YouTube years ago, between my brother being, a wrestling fan, and you're being, in that content creation space with the AOX wrestling and stuff like that. So you were really into the wrestling stuff. And that's how we all pretty much met, was through the internet. And then, long and behold, we all had something in common with like gaming and Resident Evil and stuff that we actually really liked, like franchises and stuff. But that's kind of how we all met each other, was through YouTube.
Yeah, we met basically in 2006. WWE had brought back ECW, which I was going to wear my ECW shirt tonight, but I can't find it. They had brought back ECW in 2006. So I had started a channel called ECW Review on Sci-Fi because I was done with Raw and SmackDown. I wanted to cover TNA wrestling, was like a brand new thing at the time. And I wanted to cover ECW because there were 1 hour shows at the time. And I was like, all right, I can watch these for an hour and talk about them.
Right.
We recorded a review, me and my friend Mike. Excuse me. We recorded a review. I threw it up on YouTube. I said, I don't know who's going to watch this. Lo and behold, your brother, eventually you, Eli, Jesus, Jeff, all these guys, you all watched the show, and you were all like kind of local, which I didn't know that. You guys were within like an hour, 2 hours.
Yeah.
I think Jesus is a couple hours away in New York. But eventually we all became friends, and we all meet up in real life every year, and we all hang out. And this is going on for almost 20 years. I started in 2006 on YouTube. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
I started off with the wrestling stuff, made the gaming channel, because I always grew up with video games. That was a whole big thing for me. I'm in the industry as far as gaming is concerned, you know that.
Mm-hmm.
So it just took a whole turn. And I grew up a huge Resident Evil fan. It was one of the franchises that I grew up with. I was only, was it 96? So what was that, 13?
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy how the content stuff kind of all brought us together, and then we kind of, all hang out. Like you said, like it's been, so long already to think that like we've been at the YouTube game for so long and all the different renditions. And it's like we all really started to make content together. It was right around like 2012. It was like 2011, 2012. I think it was actually 2010 when we started to do like the game trading stuff, like back in the day when you start the early days. I remember when you had the Game Traders channel or whatever it was. I forget what that was.
It was AOX Gamers. It's still up, the
Right.
channel. It's old. It's still there. All the old videos are there. Yeah, I got so you guys would look for games that you couldn't find. I would find them. And then I would be like, hey, Anthony, and I would make a video. I have an extra copy of Code Veronica on GameCube. And that's when you grabbed it.
Yeah.
I charge you like an extra $5 for shipping or
Right.
whatever. But that was like the beginning of I'm in the industry now. That's the beginning of how I got in there as far as that was concerned. Like that's kind of what I do today.
Yeah.
Just in a brick and mortar, so.
Yeah,
There you go.
they really had like a lot of, especially with the time period of, going back to like the 90s, there was it was a different time for gaming. And I think a lot of the times when we had you on before and we discussed kind of like the older days of, the 90s and Resident Evil and just like when that was in its very infancy as far as, a franchise. So I want to kind of take people back in time with this episode and discuss. It's been a while since we've discussed kind of your personal experiences with the game from back in the day, but why don't you let people know how you discovered Resident Evil back in the 90s? Obviously, you were already a fan of games leading up to, you were already on all Nintendo consoles and Sega, right? So you were all over there.
Started with the NES. I have my first game downstairs. It's just baseball, Nintendo. I have the actual cartridge downstairs. Still have that. Resident Evil. So my friend who he's no longer with us, J. Dean, he was down the street at our other friend Mark's house, And on his way home, he had stopped over at my house, and he's like, "Hey, I got this game, Resident Evil. Let's check it out." And we played the game, and I was like, "Hey, you want to sleep over so we can play this game?" And he's like, "Yeah." So he slept over or whatever. And I played the game all night, and I was like, "Yo," and then I called my friend Mario. I was like, "Yo, you got to come over here," because he lived down the street. He came over, he checked it out, and he was like, "This game is awesome." Like, it got to the point, and then Mark came back over. We were all like, "Yo, we got to get this game."
Yeah.
So because of that, it led into me liking Resident Evil. This is Resident Evil 1 I'm talking about here.
The original.
The original. So, and then eventually we all rented it, and eventually we all got it. So,
Yeah.
that's where it began.
Yeah, it's like it was a simpler time of like, like video game magazines, reading up on stuff. You didn't have everything readily available. And it was almost like word of mouth was a big thing. Like a kid getting the game and be like, "Oh, you got to check this out," or "Come over and play this on the weekend." It was and of course video stores were all over the place and Blockbusters and everything. And I remember when we were driving around your old town, how close the Blockbuster used to be to your school. You showed me like how close it used to be.
It was right there.
Yeah. So you were definitely around, like, and of course, like back then it was just so easy to rent a game. So, if you didn't get, ripped off, if the game sucked, you never knew what you were getting yourself into back then, because now it's like so easy to just look up a walkthrough or a live stream. But it really was just like word of mouth and kind of finding out from your friends. It was kind of a more organic process for finding stuff out.
Yeah. I had from JD, and I found out about Mortal Kombat.
Oh, wow.
When he explained it to me, I thought it was an army game.
It does sound like an army game if you think about it, like
And
out
I
of
was like,
context
okay.
back then. Yeah.
And then I saw that. So I'm from Westchester County, New York. So I'm from Mamaroneck. So I went to Nathan's in Yonkers, New York. And I saw Mortal Kombat there. I was like, "This is an army game. This is a fighting game. What is this?" So I played it. I played as Kano because he looked like the Terminator. And that was it. I was on Mortal Kombat. But going back to that, yeah, we had in Larchmont, where the Homix was, that was my middle school. The Blockbuster Video was right there on the Post Road. So after school, we would go in there and see what there was to rent movie-wise, gaming-wise, and I would buy a lot of pre-owned games from Blockbuster in the pre-owned section, stuff like that. But yeah, that's what we had, man. We had Blockbuster, we had GamePro, EGM, all that stuff. The internet was in its infancy at the time, so we did have the AOL message boards.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff like that. The internet wasn't too prevalent. The internet, we went on there for like cheat codes and stuff like that. As far as like articles and stuff like that, in the beginning they kind of held back because they didn't want to like ruin the print runs. So if they had information, they would save it for the magazine, but they would say, "Hey," on the internet, they would say, "Hey, we hear this, this, and this, but you might want to check out the next magazine that's coming out."
Yeah.
And now that's completely reversed. Now it's all the information is like minutes.
Yeah.
On the internet. Like, they don't even make time for magazines. A lot of magazines don't exist anymore, obviously. I know GameStop still has their Game Informer magazine.
It's still hanging on. I think you could still get physical unless they stopped selling. Maybe it's just digital now. I don't know. I kept hearing conflicting
They were doing
things.
both at one time, but I think the physical was just to, hey, this game is coming out and it's really good.
Yeah.
Wink.
Yeah.
You might want to come in and pick it up.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all it was.
It was just
for.
an
It's
ad,
not really,
Yeah,
it's not really a magazine anymore, like back in the day.
Where back in
We
the
had,
day,
like-
like there were real ads, there were crazy ads, there were scary ads. Like there was like a bunch of stuff that like, wow, like that
there's
was.
the EB Games ad where the guy walks out and his eyes are all green and he's grabbing two people that are outside the shop.
Oh man.
And it's just, and they're like, "Whoa, what's this guy doing to us?" And it's like ridiculous.
Yeah.
A lot of the ads are crazy. I had the Sega Saturn ad. Okay. You open it, it's like a naked woman with all the Sega games covering her up. And I got in trouble for that.
Wow.
It's like, hey, I didn't print the magazine.
Yeah, it's like, you had to almost like keep it, a secret, because sometimes the ads would be so like, crazy like that, it'd be like mature, but it's not. It was just like a pretty much like a teen magazine, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't anything crazy. Game Informer was not even around back then. It was like, it was all like, you know, Electronic Gaming Monthly. You had, you know, Extreme, it was like, oh, I forget the one. It was like Extreme or with an X or something like that. I forget what it was. There's a couple different ones that
It
I
might have
still
been
have.
Game Informer back in the day. I don't remember. There was one with Mario 64 on the cover.
Yeah,
That might have been Game
yeah,
Informer.
there was Game Informers. Yeah, because I know Resident Evil 2 had a cover. I know they started in like the late 90s, I'm pretty sure. But you know,
Dude, that was the 90s, like magazine heaven for
right.
gaming.
I guess
And they
Nintendo
had all
Power,
different
right?
ones.
That was like the big one that really started to
Nintendo
push that
Power, I
off
think, was one of the first. That
in
was
the 80s. Yeah.
I
So
used to get those when I was a kid because my dad signed me up for that.
yeah, because I know I have a couple. PlayStation Magazine Resident Evils as well. That was more in like, you know, when they were doing the actual
I
demo
used to get
discs.
those as well.
You know,
PSM would give you the lid, the sticker that you would put on the lid of the PS1, and I put that Resident Evil zombie sticker on my lid. That thing would not come off. Now you got vinyl, you rip the stuff right off.
Yeah.
Back in the day, that was actual glue, and that almost destroyed the lid of my PlayStation. Just getting that thing off. I had it on for like 2 or 3 years or whatever. I was like, all right, I'm tired of looking at this thing.
Yeah,
I go to pull it off, and it's peeling off. It's not coming off.
Right, because it would always just completely get, you know, stuck on the console. All the stuff would be, you know, so hard to get off. And I remember seeing some of that stuff on eBay, like where people are selling those Resident Evil stickers, which would be cool. If I got them, I would just keep them. I would never.
Now you got Etsy.
Exactly.
And you got vinyl, so it comes right off, and it's cheap, and you can get them whenever you want.
People make them in their own store, and you know it's easy. You know, they even had, they have that Resident Evil 1.5 mock-up case for like the disc. I think that was on Etsy for a time. There's a lot of stuff on there that is like any kind of franchise you want to look for. You can pick that stuff up.
Etsy's great for all that stuff, but I mean, you know, you'll be on there all day looking for stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
You don't have any money left when you get off of there, so there you go.
Now, what do you remember about Director's Cut? Because you said a really cool story back in the day, and a lot of people might not know this, but you know, Director's Cut promised a lot of things for you guys. You know, there was a lot of promises to the fans when that thing was coming out, that it was going to be uncut over here and stuff. What do you remember from that time period? So you already played the first game, but then you hear about, you know, Resident Evil 2 is being made, but I guess we can also talk about 1.5 in this, because back when Director's Cut was kicking around, 1.5 was in the magazines. Do you remember anything from that time period when you started? Because that momentum for RE2 was big, and you were there for all of it.
All right, so Resident Evil 1.5. It looked incredible in the magazine. We couldn't wait. It looked scarier than the first game. We were like, wow, you can shoot the cops. And we remember the fat cops that you can kill. And we were like, wow, those things, they look like actual zombies.
It was upping the realism for sure. Like at the time,
right.
that looked incredible from what the first game was.
And then Director's Cut. It was like, so for games today, when a game comes out and you're like, okay, it needs a patch. Director's Cut had promised a lot of stuff like auto aim. It had the arrange mode. It sounded very cool because it was like, okay, they're giving you a lot more for the first game. So it was great. And then they said, you're going to get the uncut intro. It's going to be uncensored, blah, 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 blah. It comes out. We all got it. And the intro is not uncut. And this is if it would take place today, you'd get a ton of people on the internet. Back then, you didn't get any of that. However, you did get people writing into the magazine saying, hey, this isn't uncut. Excuse me. And then they would post in the magazine like, hey, there's a situation here. And GamePro had posted that it was a localization error. And Capcom felt bad, and so they put the uncut version on the website. You had to go to Resident Evil's website, download an AVI file, and it was called PU. Like, PU. It was uncut, it was uncensored. You had to agree to be over 18 years old, all this other stuff. It was free, you could download it. What they did was they took the PC version That file is on the PC version, the AVI file called pu.avi. All they did was put it on their site. You could download it. That was from the PC version. It was in color. It was uncensored. It was gory. It was the way it was supposed to be, but they never put it in the PlayStation version. Even when they released the second DualShock Director's Cut, which is a ridiculous name for a game, that wasn't even on there as well. I bought that for $20. It debuted at $20 on Greatest Hits, and I didn't get the intro. So what happened with the intro was, for the original Director's Cut, Capcom said you would call them and be like, what's going on? And they felt bad, so they sent you the strategy guide and the t-shirt. And some other stuff too, I don't remember. Well, I called twice. I got two sets of them. And then I posted on the AOL message board, I'm suing Capcom. And then, like, a couple of days later, I won the lawsuit. They're sending me this and that. That was me. So if anybody remembers that was me.
I love it. It's from, like, a lost time, when, again...
A lot of people were like, you're full of crap. You didn't file a lawsuit. This is funny. This is something funny to write.
Right. But it's also, like, them trying to kind of just, kind of go back on a thing that they said, hey, this game was going to include it, but then it turns out we didn't get the severed head in America until the DS version, besides the PC.
We still don't know what happened. They said it was a localization error and they were sorry, but they never put it in the other director's cut.
You're right.
So what happened?
Yeah, why did they never update that?
Error?
Yeah, and then also, like, when they make this new director's cut that's on the PlayStation service, and it's obviously reworked graphic-wise, why is the severed head not in there? It's a new version of director's cut because it has those features, and the music is the old school way from the first release of director's cut, but it doesn't have the added stuff in there, so it's just kind of like put over.
I thought that was just the regular director's cut they uploaded.
It's apparently a different version, which is why people like myself that bought it, or even someone like you who might have bought it on the PS3 store, it won't be honored because it's a different serial number. It's under a different thing.
Right.
So,
well, listen, the one on PS3 is the DualShock Director's Cut.
Yes, that's the one with the changed music.
The one on PS5 is the OG Director's Cut.
Right. But you can use the analog,
licensing
though.
Comes in.
Right.
Okay, so they added that support then.
Right. So that's the difference. Now, should you be able to buy it by itself? I think so. I don't want to have to. But, that's why, again, people want Capcom to kind of put out those games again themselves. But, yeah, that's kind of interesting that, like, you had to kind of just write in and then they were like, all right, here's a strategy guide. Here's a T-shirt. That's a cool part of, that release, because
that was completely free. They mailed it to you because they felt bad. But, again, they never fixed that problem. It's like, okay, we'll send you free stuff now. And then in a couple of years when we release it again, no one's going to care. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
But the true fans were like, what happened? We still don't know to this day what localization error means.
Yeah, what is that? Why was that?
We thought maybe they left the old files on the disc when they went to print it out. But they never explained, and they never reprinted it. They never did anything. They didn't put that file on the DualShock Director's Cut.
So the only way is like to import a Biohazard copy, right, or download it. You know what I mean? Back
or
then,
to buy the PC version and you got it in color.
Yeah, that too.
Which I got that too. But listen, you have modders today which are doing fantastic work, hardware wise and software wise.
Right.
You have modders out there that put that game back together with that intro in it. Which, shout out to those guys, because I've waited like 30 years for that. So
the true director's cut, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you were the one that told me about that, and
that guy keeps updating it. I don't know who that guy is, or if that person or that team, whoever it is. Thank you for doing that. And they keep updating it. Like when they find a bug or whatever, people let them know, and they're like, all right, in the next patch, we'll address all that stuff.
Now, but that was all to keep people held over for Resident Evil 2 that was already, delayed.
You know what that was? Because RE1 was word by mouth. When everyone was getting hyped up for Resident Evil 2. They released Director's Cut as hey, now that these other people know about RE2, if you want to go back, here's Director's Cut.
Right. Now that's the thing. do you remember when you played that RE2 demo for the first time? Were you like, holy shit? And when you bought that thing? Yeah.
That's why I bought it. I mean, we all bought it for. It was a bonus. It was literally a bonus because you wanted the dual shot. You wanted the director's cut, the original director's cut, for all the features and the auto aim and the arrange mode, the new costumes. That was a big deal back then. You wanted it for all that, and then the bonus, the cherry on top of the sundae, was that demo disc, which wasn't that long, but that demo disc was like the disc.
Yeah, that gave you a true taste of it because we didn't get a chance to play any kind of like 1.5 demo or get our hands on it until years
out of
later.
That demo disc, then Game Shark came along. You were able to try to get in some of the doors that weren't accessible.
Yeah, Game Shark.
And it would crash and everything and all that stuff. But that was when you bought a special edition that wasn't really touted as a special edition. That came with a lot.
It was packed.
Now you buy $100 collector's editions and you don't get half the stuff that. Like,
no.
Now you get costumes or colors in your costume or whatever. You don't get anything substantial. Back then, that was a big deal. You had a Resident Evil 2 demo that nobody else had. And they had to wait. You literally had to wait.
Yeah, there was like nothing you can do. It was just like...
You didn't get that dual... If you didn't get that... I keep saying DualShock Director. You didn't get that director's cut with the disc in it. That was it, man.
Yeah.
Like, you had to wait for Resident Evil 2 to come out.
There's also a variant of Resident Evil Director's Cut that is like, the original cover of Director's Cut, but it doesn't include the RE2 demo.
Right,
so
it's just a single...
It's a standalone. It goes between like 80 to 100, but I'm still kind of like trying to hunt that down. But the thing is that the Director's Cut stuff, I remember that being pretty much my first memory of Resident Evil 1 was through the Director's Cut copies. So I definitely have nostalgia for those because that's kind of what me and my brother were around, but my dad owned the first game, so I would go back and kind of question what those differences were, and then you kind of find out like later when you read the strategy guide that okay.
That auto aim is a godsend.
Oh yeah.
Because I played the game, the original game. I have the original. I still have it. I didn't get the long box one. I got the jewel case. Yo, having to turn around and shoot everybody. Yeah, your thumb was like dead. But we did it because we enjoyed the game.
And don't forget the headshots, right? Because Jill's handgun can get those headshots in that, and that was awesome. They updated a lot of stuff in that.
Updated a lot. So that's what I'm saying. Like back then, when they updated games, it was worth your while. Instead of like today, where it's like, oh yeah, we forgot to do this. Oh, we didn't have time to do this. We didn't do.
Yeah.
Like, you have the tech now, and I'm just gonna say this: a lot of the devs are lazy.
That's true.
For all the companies, I'm not just talking about Capcom or Resident Evil.
Right.
For every game that comes out, all the games are broken. Yeah, we'll fix it later. Like, no. Back in the day, if you got a game that was broken, they would try to make it right. Now the games are broken. They're like, how much did it sell? Oh, it didn't sell what we projected. All right, screw them.
Yeah, it's a very like, they just kind of like, they have more resources than ever, but it seems like sometimes with some of these, the way they roll out some of these games, and this could be any company, like you said, it definitely, it makes you question a lot. You're just like, how? Like, how do you have X amount,
I think back in the day, it was a make or break type thing. Like, Capcom had to put out quality games or else...
And they also were putting out Street Fighter, this edition, that edition, like other things. So they're known for putting out multiple...
Capcom
releases.
Was great back in the day. Capcom still is good. There was that period about 10 years ago where everything was questionable.
Yeah.
But, I mean, besides that like one time, Capcom's always been fantastic.
Yeah.
They've always put out quality. They've always listened to the fan base. They've always taken the feedback. I mean, granted, I did buy 1,000 Street Fighter 2s from them.
I feel like everyone did back then, though.
But again, they kept upping the ante. Like, they kept adding people and adding features and moves and all this stuff. And you're like, okay, it might be worth the upgrade.
Yeah.
And we're not talking like every other year. It was like, a couple of years they would add a couple of guys in.
And MK would do the same stuff. They'd release a lot of stuff, as well. Like a lot of fighting games did a lot of expansions, and different console versions had different stuff. And, Resident Evil kind of had stuff like that too, where like different ports would offer different things. We kind of got into that more with like, the Dreamcast kind of being introduced to stuff, and that being taking on more of a PC approach because it was so powerful. It was like a PC. So it really compared in the PC graphics and stuff like that. But
Well, a lot of people, you guys don't realize Doom, the original Doom and Doom 2, they all had expansion packs that you could buy. Literally, you would go to like EB Games, or before GameStop, there was Software, etc., which GameStop bought them all out, but it was EB Games and Software, etc.
mhm.
You would walk into like EB Games and they would have expansions for Doom and Quake. And those expansions would be like $40, $50. They'd be like full-fledged prices for games because they would extend the game. And they were good. They were good back then. But that was to like, again, get you over the hump until the next game. But they did it good. Like a lot of the companies did it well and some of them didn't, but that was very, very rare that a company would make an expansion and the expansion sucked.
Yeah.
Now today, forget it. I mean, again, I think it's just people are they're out of ideas, they're lazy, they're on a time crunch, they can't get this stuff out, and that's what makes the quality suffer for a lot of these games today. But back then, I mean, people tried, man. They really did try. Duke Nukem had a lot of expansion. Duke Nukem 3D, a lot. Plutonium Edition, all that stuff. And they were quality, for sure. You got your money's worth.
Yeah, that's the thing too. It's like, and they were really trying. Most of the time, they were trying to hold the fans over just so they had something to consume while they were trying to get another game done. And I think in the same thing for like something like Duke Nukem, which it took a while, or a lot of the other franchises where they sometimes the sequels would take a bit, or they would scrap what they had and those ideas. And when Resident Evil 2 came out for you, bring me back there a little bit, because the build up obviously was there, the delays were there, but you had those little director's cut expansion to kind of have for a bit. But do you remember your first time kind of jumping into Resident Evil 2, which is still considered one of the best video game sequels of all time?
Yeah, I was in high school, and in the magazines again. I forgot what magazine it was. It was PSM. I think it's with Leon on the cover. It's like a red and black cover, and he's like elbowing a zombie or like punching a
Yes,
zombie.
yeah,
or
that's
something.
the official PlayStation magazine cover where it's him on the
I
front.
don't, I don't know if it's that magazine, but I remember it was like early in the morning, probably second period or first period for gym. Me and a couple of guys are sitting on the in the hallway towards the gym doors or whatever. We're sitting on the floor with, I think, that magazine. You open it and there's a few pages about Resident Evil 2, and I think the title was "This game is bloody" or something, or they just showed a bunch of bloody scenes in the game, and we were like, "Yo, that looks a lot better from the 1.5 that we saw." And then you get the game, and it looks like all the zombies came from a friggin' rock and roll concert. And we're like, what happened to the cop zombies? What happened to all these scary looking zombies? We knew about the Elza Walker
Right.
and Master's wife from Street Fighter um, turning into Claire Redfield. We got that. We understood that. And that was acceptable. Like, it was like, okay, they want to tie it into the first game or whatever. That's cool. Leon had changed a little bit costume wise, but seemed fine to me. The story like made sense. Like we were all excited for the game. We were like, "Oh shit!" Like that took place in the mansion. This is taking place in the city. Like this is a bigger, better, badder type game. And again, it brought in the masses because a lot of people still didn't play RE1, but they were going to go out and buy RE2 because RE2 looked insane in magazines.
Right.
It was being promoted when you walked into Software, etc. They had the videotape of the alligator scene with Leon.
Just playing
That
on a
scene,
loop.
yeah. Well, they had the little demo playing it, but that one scene where he blows up the alligator, that sold the game. That sold the game to a lot of people that just walked into Software, etc., and were like, Hey, what's that? Oh, that's Resident Evil 2. And people would look at it and they'd see the alligator thing or crocodile, whatever the hell he is. And they'd be like, oh,
Yeah,
I gotta get that game.
like it was serious. Like that's the thing. I think the sequels at the time, it was either, it was like, it was going to make or break the franchise, whether or not they can really, the sophomore slump is a thing, in the industry of gaming. And, sometimes a sequel can either be a lot, better and push the boundaries. And I think with RE2, they definitely nailed it because they had,
Well, they did.
they
They
just,
did nail it.
they really did like take their time and be like, okay, if we lived in a universe where 1.5 did come out, I don't know if it would have been as big of a hit right off the bat. I think it still would have been successful, but I think just the way everything unfolded is so iconic, and it's so like I can't imagine RE2 any other way because it's so impactful. And definitely to see it from your perspective from back then, it's definitely pretty crazy to know that it was that anticipation was building because it was already delayed up until that point, and it just looked so crazy from the adverts.
You see, I'm going to tell you something right here, right now. I think the Resident Evil 2 that we got was a much streamlined version of Resident Evil 2 because let me tell you, the Resident Evil 1.5, it sounded like it was going to be a bigger game than Resident Evil 2. Like it was going to be a longer, drawn out storyline of a game because you had more characters involved originally. Um, you had to help this guy, you had to go back, and there were survivors you had to actually like bring along with you in that game. And Resident Evil 2, it's more like the first where you're on your own, you're just like trying to get out. Whereas the other game you're trying to get out, but you have a bunch of different things going on, a bunch of different factors, you have a bunch of different characters that are like involved. This game kind of streamlined all that. They eliminated, I think, 3 or 4 characters. So yes, the game was like a blockbuster success as far as like people running out and buying it. But that was pretty much it. I mean, after everyone was so hyped up for 2, it kind of the popularity, I'm not saying the popularity died down, but nobody even knew that Resident Evil 3 was coming out. It was just like, okay, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. And we're like, what? Out of nowhere. I didn't even know it was coming out. I found it on a Yahoo auction. Somebody had the Japanese version, but when eBay had just started, Yahoo started their own auction site called Yahoo Auctions.
The throwback.
Yeah, and for $15 I bought Biohazard: The Last Escape.
And that was only a year
Biohazard
later,
3.
right? So it's like, almost 2 years later.
Well,
But it
what
was
was
November,
it, 99?
November of '99. But September, I think, of '99
Well,
for
November.
Japan, and then November for America of '99.
So I didn't even know this game was coming out. And I was a big Resident Evil fan. But then I had found the Yahoo auction in the summertime or whatever, or in September. I had bought the game. I thought it was an actual Japanese game. They sent me a bootleg disc. So I said whatever. So I had the game wizard at the time. Put it in there. I don't know how to read Japanese. I beat the whole game. It was great. And then it came out in November, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. But I had no idea until that auction that came out. It's like you went from Resident Evil 2, the biggest Resident Evil game of all time, to, all right, guys, yeah, Resident Evil 3 is coming out. It was like an afterthought. It's
Right.
like they didn't really promote it that well.
It was announced
It
E3
wasn't-
that year, I think. So it was literally just like E3, and then it came out that fall. It was just kind of like they kind of just put it out.
But
And
it was like they didn't even care about it.
is that
like,
really
it was
what
like
it
nothing.
it seemed like that, right? From a consumer standpoint back
It
then.
seemed like I saw the ads like in October in the magazines. I already had beaten the stupid game, the import.
Now, did you hear about Dino Crisis? Because these were also coming out literally
Dino
within
Crisis,
a few months.
We all heard about, and we were excited. We're like, okay, it's Resident Evil with dinosaurs. It's going to be
Because they tried to
100%.
cross promote it with the demos. Like Dino Crisis would have a demo of RE3 in case you didn't know about it, and then vice versa, right? It was like
Maybe that's where all the promotion went to then. Dino Crisis.
That is a
not
good
RE3.
point. That is a good
Because
point.
I don't remember really anything of RE3. Like I said, I found it out on friggin' Yahoo
There wasn't
Auction.
even really demos besides the like the Dino Crisis one, where Resident Evil 2 had like, you know, the demo and director's cut, and it had demo in PlayStation magazines. Resident Evil 3, and you know, I collect a bunch of demos too, and like I've never saw a Resident Evil 3 demo in any of the official PlayStation magazine releases, besides Resident Evil 2 had one, obviously, and then Resident Evil 3 got one with Dino Crisis, but it wasn't in any of like, it was in magazines, but it wasn't in any of the actual demo discs, unless it might have been in the UK. You know,
it
or
wasn't
something.
like they put a lot of like advertisement into all that.
Okay.
RE2 was all over the place. RE3, you wouldn't have known it was coming out, but you did know about Dino Crisis, so maybe they took that budget.
My dad just bought Dino Crisis with the strategy guide, so he found out about it some one way or another. And back then,
maybe they figured. I think this is really what happened. Capcom probably figured, if we want people to buy Dino Crisis, got to give them something Resident Evil in the package.
right?
That's why they're like, oh, Resident Evil 3 demo? I'm going to buy the game just to check out the Resident Evil 3 demo.
Because maybe they didn't know about it.
Like,
right.
Yeah.
Like you said, it was very scarce with the advertising.
Well, even Dino Crisis, you'd be like, well, I might not want to take a chance on Dino Crisis. What is this? But if you have a RE3 demo in there, oh, I'm going to buy it for the demo, but I'll play Dino Crisis now that I just spent money on it. So it helped promote, they helped each other.
Yeah, that's really
Resident
cool.
Evil kind of helped sell Dino Crisis.
Yeah.
With that demo disc.
Because they did kind of come out of nowhere, and now we kind of live in an era where Dino Crisis is kind of like something that fans really want, and that's like the rumor that it could be coming back. Who knows what's going on?
I think that's the most... I think they really dropped the ball with that. The Jurassic World movies. I mean, look, the last two bombed, really.
Right.
But when the first one was coming out, the hype was real. They should have had a team on that remake, and that remake should have been out that year.
Yeah, because it came off the presses of the, you know, right off the presses of Jurassic Park being really hot in the 90s, you know, and that, you know, that was coming out right off of that success. So you're right. Like if they kind of used another Jurassic Park movie to kind of like, you know, use that hype up, like you said, but now it's like the other trilogy's done. Right.
Now that, well, the last two movies bombed. Even if you released it within the third movie, it would have.
Yeah.
I don't know. It would have done well, but maybe not as well.
And up until that point, I think just the first two, because Jurassic Park 3 came out in 2000, so I think at that point you had two Jurassic Park movies out that people were, you know, raving about. I mean, some people don't like Lost World, but I mean, I think the first one is clearly the best one. So I think people had that in their mind.
Okay, look, I saw Lost World in theaters, okay? The movie theater was packed. People were going to see that movie like crazy. Thinking an armchair quarterback that now, 30 years later.
I love this.
Okay? But unless you were there, and not your grandparents, because I know half these people were born in 2015 over here, saying that the movie bombed when you weren't even around. But when that movie came out, everyone was going out to see that film. Okay? I don't want to hear this.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it wasn't that good of a movie. Okay, you could say that 30 years later. But when it was in the theaters, everyone was going to see it because that was the only freaking movie that was out.
You couldn't deny that people were excited after the first one. You know what I mean?
Right. No, they were. The first one did crazy. The first movie did so well that everyone ran out and bought the novel.
Yeah.
Because the novel had more stuff in it.
And I didn't mind Lost World either. I just think most people, you know, clearly look at the first one as like the definitive one. And I think so, but that doesn't take anything away from that.
Because the Lost World, you're like, where's the rest of the cast?
Right.
Why is Jeff Goldblum? He's a nerdy guy in the first film.
Yeah.
Why is he like the main guy in this? And if you watch the movie now, again, armchair quarterback, the movie's not really put together well. But back then, the second movie was riding off the high of the first film.
Yeah. And
it was very popular, and people went out and saw it, and they loved it back then. 30 years later, you could always pick apart a film and be like, well, this, and this, and that. And it's like, yes, but at the time,
it was exciting.
It was a great movie.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, that's the thing. And we talked about before, like Capcom kind of using a lot of the film influence in their games, right? So at that time too, like again, coming off of like even the 90s with like, you know, Night of the Living Dead remake and Zombies trying to kind of come back a little bit there. It was a clear, inspired thing from George Romero, not only the original, but George Romero was also, you know, obviously got Tom Savini to direct the remake, and that was clearly just all Resident Evil, all wrapped up.
I highly
in that
recommend that film, Night of the Living Dead remake from, what was it, 1991 or 1990?
1990.
Okay, listen. Anybody watching this, I think it's on Xbox or PlayStation, the Movies Anywhere thing, or Amazon or whatever. Look up the movie, either buy it physically or digitally, whatever. If you want a real Resident Evil type movie, that's basically Resident Evil the movie, because your guy over there who created Resident Evil, Shinji Mikami, or is that somebody else?
Yeah. Shinji Mikami.
He was interviewed. This interview was on GameFAQs back in the day. It was in one of the walkthroughs. At the very bottom, the guy had like the interview with him. He said that movie, Night of the Living Dead remake, inspired Resident Evil, the first game. And you can tell because certain things in that film resonate with Resident Evil. They did borrow a lot from that film. A lot of people don't know that.
Right.
I can't find that. Went back on GameFAQs. I can't find that Q&A. But I read it a long time ago. And if again, correlate the movie with the game, and you'll come to your own conclusions there.
Yeah, and it was a different era,
lifted.
right? It was a different era of horror, and they always kind of had, a real eye on what American horror was doing at the time. And
They were fans.
they were just fans. Yeah.
Kojima was fans of all the action films, the 80s action films, and he made Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah,
all of that.
exactly. All the names and stuff he kind of had inspired that he named his characters and stuff. It's all relative to what they actually just end up enjoying. And even Barbara in the remake is a lot
for
more
the NES. He's
right.
ripping off friggin' aliens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And obviously, with
or Terminator. What was that? Terminator 1.
And even Resident Evil 0, the reason why it has the inventory system that it does is because of Sweet Home. He actually felt that Resident Evil was becoming too easy, and it was something, we're reading an interview, me and John were discussing it, and it was very fascinating to hear him say stuff like that, where it's, because Sweet Home was a different style of game and kind of how that kind of went into the 90s and everything started to change, and then you have this Night of the Living Dead remake that is... It is a different vibe of a film. I mean, Barbara actually survives, and she kind of is very reminiscent of Jill in that, So there's a lot of things that you see, and you're like, damn, this is actually kind of cool. And you see how, obviously Resident Evil was originally going to be first person, and then they kind of swapped out that idea for the fixed camera angle kind of thing. But it's just cool to see those different eras. And George A. Romero was about to direct the movie. I mean, during this time period when Resident Evil 2 was coming out, I'm sure you read about it in the magazines, like he already directed the commercial in Japan. He was already in talks of, getting this stuff out there, and then obviously it didn't go anywhere. And even on front of the RE2 case, what does it say? Win a part in the Resident Evil movie that is never going to come out, because by the time, RE2 came out,
something about that.
It was
I
done.
hated that. I got so mad when I got the game and it had that big yellow thing on it. I was like, "You ruined the case for this."
Right. And that's how you could distinguish
you
the
put
first
this in the manual.
Right. You could distinguish the first pressing between that and the DualShock, because DualShock removed it, but then they put the red little sticker on it, or the blood stain
they
thing
made
on
the
it.
discs like blood red, just to let you know.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
DualShock.
Yeah, it was a different, it's just a different time in the industry there, and even with Resident Evil 3 coming out, like when you kind of saw that kind of end the trilogy, did you feel like it was like, okay, where do we go from here? Or because obviously it wasn't that long
because we already knew that Code Veronica was coming out on Dreamcast. We thought Code Veronica was Resident Evil 3, and then we're like, well, I guess Code Veronica is Resident Evil 4. And by the way, Team Echelon, or whatever those Echelon,
yeah,
the Dreamcast Ripper guys, they ripped Code Veronica as RE4 Disc 1. RE4. Like, even they thought it was Resident Evil 4.
So
and then Resident Evil 4 was announced, and we're like, I thought Code Veronica was 4. And it's not related, even though it is
that's awesome to hear your perspective on that, because it was so close, because it was actually announced in August of 98, Code Veronica. So you're sitting there like, okay, this game's coming out. this sounds like an epic title, right? Dreamcast drops the same
That's
month.
why I wanted a Dreamcast for Code Veronica and Castlevania Resurrection,
so
which got canceled.
September 99, you're there, right? You buy Dreamcast, and you immediately...
Toys R Us, Poughkeepsie, New York. I went all the way upstate to go get it. They had a trade-in program, and that's a funny thing, too. You could trade in a PlayStation with 10 games, and you get $100 off the Dreamcast, which was $199.
That's sweet.
So what happened was I had bought, I had family in Poughkeepsie, still do. Frank's over there. But I had family there, and I didn't have, I was always bringing my computer, I was bringing my consoles. I was like, you know what, I'm going to get a PlayStation off eBay, a used one.
So you just have one.
And I'm going to leave a few games up there, just so when I go there, I have stuff up there. Well, I type in PlayStation, and some lady had listed a Sony PlayStation. Literally, she named it PlayStation because that's what she thought it was. They were going for like $50, $60. I got it for $15.
Holy shit! A
Sent
steal
it to me. Yeah, and the lady said it didn't work. Worked.
Probably put the disc in upside down or something.
Well, yeah, but not even. I thought I would have to do that, but not even. I got it. I put the games and everything worked. I was like, okay. Left a bunch of games at my relative's house, and then I went up there, and then I went to Toys R Us because they lived across the street from Toys R Us in Poughkeepsie, and they had this thing say trade in PlayStation 10 games. I didn't have 10 games to trade in that I wanted to trade in, but I had a few games. So I went to Dragon's Den in Poughkeepsie, which I don't know what the hell's going on with them now, but they used to sell video games. I bought about 5 or 6 of the PlayStation Jam Pack discs for, what was it, $5 a piece. Took them to Toys R Us. They didn't care. They didn't care what. They're like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You got 10 games. Here's the console that I got for $15. They gave me $100 off Dreamcast.
Wow. So back then you were even just trying to get the deals, you know what I mean, as best as you could, because even nowadays it's always smart to see if you could trade stuff in for money off and stuff like that. Back then, though, you were facing the next generation of gaming. I mean, the Dreamcast was a huge step. Like, this was a huge step. For, you know, PlayStation 2, it's still a year away. So when you get this Dreamcast, this is pretty much like you getting out of that Saturn, PlayStation 1, N64 era.
Well, I want to make this clear to your viewers because I know this is the biggest piece of junk going on today. I like all games. I like all consoles, okay? Despite what I say on the podcast, I make fun of Sony a lot because Sony does make stupid decisions. So does Microsoft, and Nintendo makes the dumbest decisions.
We talk about all of them. Yeah.
But the bottom line is I'm not a fanboy. I like all of it, and I got to have all of it. So one way or another, I was getting the Sega Dreamcast. One way or another, I was getting a PS2. And we all know what happened with Dreamcast and PS2. It wasn't the piracy on the Dreamcast that killed it. It was the freaking DVD for the PlayStation 2. People waited a year, saved the extra $100, and they bought the PS2 for the DVD functionality. Because guess what? When the Dreamcast, when they closed the doors, people started buying them. They were getting them for like no money, but they were buying them.
They're a moving product, yeah.
It was too late. It was done.
It was already too late. Yeah. Well, that's the thing too. So like you already have, you know, this Dreamcast, and at this point, Resident Evil 3 comes out on the PS1 in November in America. So you're already like, you already have this console that's like significantly better. But then when you play Resident Evil 3, it you know, it does look a little bit better than Resident Evil 2. It runs smoother, but you could clearly see that by the time Code Veronica came out in February of 2000, so not even a half a year later, Code Veronica just comes right out as the direct sequel to RE2. Let me tell you
something. I think I cut school for that. I took the Beeline bus to White Plains at the Pavilion Center. They had Toys R Us there. I think I went during like the afternoon, and I got Code Veronica. Took the bus back home. I don't know if I went back to school or if I went back. Sometimes I would cut school, buy games in White Plains, take the bus back to school and brag, be like, look what I got. And they're like, how did you get that? I'm like, well, I cut school and I got it.
Sometimes you just gotta skip a little class to get the game early. I don't know. It happens. It's just
Yeah, I hated school. You know what it was? I don't like being on other people's time schedules. Even today, I don't like doing that. You can't give me an itinerary. I just can't do it.
right.
I for whatever reason I can't. So I've always been like that. And people are like, "Oh, why don't you want to do this?" I can't be on somebody else's schedule. I gotta be on my own schedule.
Yeah.
So that was the whole thing with me with school. But yeah, I just went over there and bought the game. It wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, that was a true, direct sequel, because we know Resident Evil 3 obviously had to come out. They made it a direct sequel, but it was just to kind of get the Sony contract kind of fulfilled as well, along with Survivor, right? Because Survivor came out the summer of 2000, even more out of place.
Here's the thing, though. Like back then, we didn't know anything about those contracts. We didn't
Right.
care. Like
Right.
when I say we, I mean like me and my friends at the time. You know what I mean? Which a lot of us still hang out together to this day. So
Yeah.
not a big deal. But that wasn't.
It wasn't.
Nobody cared. Like today, everyone cares about like these contracts, these deals, and all this
Right.
stuff.
Right.
Today it is a big deal because it's kind of ruining the industry in a way. We won't get into that because I don't want to get you in trouble, but that stuff is ruining the gaming industry today, one way or another. But back then,
It didn't
nobody
matter.
cared
It
about
was
that
it was
stuff.
more
Like,
carefree. Right.
it was like, okay, who cares?
There
I'll
was no
play the next
forums.
Resident
There was
Evil.
no social media. You were just reading
Well, there
magazines.
were forums and stuff, but nobody cared about that.
Right.
Stuff.
Well, there wasn't like, I guess I should clarify, like forums for just bitching, right? Like there wasn't it was just forums of fans that were like just talking about like, hey, did you do this in the game? Did you unlock this? Like it was like
People would complain and stuff like that, but about the game, it wasn't like, oh, do you know that they did this, and this, and they're keeping this away from this machine. Like that wasn't like a thing.
right.
Now
right.
today, that's all it is because everyone likes negativity.
Right. Right.
But
Back then, it wasn't about that, but that's why I like that
no,
you can
back
give
then,
that
It was
perspective.
about gaming and having fun, and
Right.
all that stuff.
I like that though, because I like that you could kind of shine light into that era of gaming that is no
Let me
longer
tell you
around.
something. I'm going to tell you the funniest thing. Now you go on Twitter and the internet and everything. You say something and everyone's a negative a-hole.
Right.
Okay? And it's expected. Back in the day, it was called flamed. You'd be in a forum, right? And they would talk or whatever. And if you said something messed up, you would get flamed, which would mean everyone would respond like, "What the hell are you talking about, man? Get the hell out of here!" You know what? And everyone would attack you and just get you out of there. It was quite the opposite of today.
Right.
If you had a negative opinion that they didn't agree with, you got flamed.
They kicked you out of that room.
You go
It
on
was like the
internet,
Wild
everything's
West.
negative, and if you have a positive opinion, you get, I don't know, you get destroyed. You can't even call flamed anymore.
Right.
But back then, it was the funniest thing because you could tell when you're scrolling down and reading, like, oh man, this guy's gonna get flamed. And then you go down, and it's just
a
like
whole thread of like crap. Yeah.
It's like 16 pages.
Yeah, that's the thing too.
wow.
It's like it's changed so much, and that's the thing. I like the simpler times of when, it was just kind of like just enjoying it, and it was like less is more. There wasn't like so much information about the game.
No, nobody cared.
Right.
Nobody cared about this.
If
stuff.
you liked it, you liked it, and
it was all about the game.
Right, and the Dreamcast stuff, like that was a big deal. Because I remember coming home with
It's a huge
Code Veronica with my brother. It was probably sometime in 2000, shortly after release, but we had Dreamcast, and I remember seeing that, and I was like, this is the next generation of Resident Evil. Like when you see those Code Veronica graphics, the way the rain effects, the lighting effects on the island and everything. Obviously, Code Veronica was a challenging game. I'm still not the best at it. I've definitely liked it more over the years. Like back in the day, like even when you were on the show, I probably would be more critical about it, but I've definitely kind of grown to like it more and more. I always liked it, but I definitely always looked at it as more of like a frustrating Resident Evil game because it was a challenge, but now I do enjoy more of the elements of the story and stuff like that. But
I never had an issue with it, but that's where Resident Evil started making the villains look stupid.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I just played RE5 earlier today. I beat the whole game. And there was that guy,
Irving?
Irving, okay? I don't even know what this guy is.
Yeah.
I'm Italian, and he comes off like he's from the Bronx. But he looks nothing like he'd be from the Bronx.
His
And it's
accent makes no sense. Like
his accent makes no sense. He's like trying to be Italian. Like he's trying to be a stupid Italian mixed with being a creep. But he looks like he's Irish.
it's kind of just like a background character. Like you see him with
And
like
these characters don't shut up. Like he keeps like and he can't speak. Okay, he acts like he got hooked on phonics and he got screwed up somehow. That's an old reference for a lot of people. But the guy's horrible. And it's like, wait a minute. This guy is threatening Chris and Sheva. But this guy can't even speak.
yeah, it's kind of like it's a very like cheesy B movie, like
I don't like that.
B character.
If you got like in Mortal Kombat, yeah, that got wonky at some point. But
Right.
You know what? You had Shang Tsung had Goro. He had all these other guys. They're ready to whoop your ass. They're not sitting there acting stupid. I mean, maybe in later iterations they did, but
Yeah, it started to get goofy because even RE4 didn't have a character like Irving. Because like even if you look at like RE4, it was like okay, Big Cheese,
Capcom
Salazar,
always throws in these stupid characters since Code Veronica. It started with Code Veronica, I believe,
right?
because you had in Zero, you had the guy, the leech guy that starts dancing.
Yeah.
He's dressed like he came from like a festival, and it's like,
James
what are we
Marcus.
doing with this?
Oh.
Even
You have the
Wesker and
leech man.
Birkin, they see this guy spawning, and they look at each other in the cutscene like, what?
Yeah,
People remember this, but Resident Evil 4 was delayed like 85 times. It was delayed for years. And I remember I got a Nintendo Power, and it had Leon and El Gigante on the cover. It was a black cover, and El Gigante is giant,
yeah.
and Leon's with the shotgun looking at him. And even then, it was like, I'm like, is this game ever coming out? And I think it came out a year after that magazine came out.
yeah.
I could
Because
be wrong.
right, because they had the Hookman trailer. You know that was known as 3.5, and that got
Again,
scrapped.
that was another thing too. We were like, okay, this game looks like it's going to be creepy and scary, right? And they were changing the tone because it wasn't going to be zombie-esque. It was going to be more spiritual and, you know, all that crazy stuff with ghosts and everything. The logo from Ghostbusters was going to chase Leon around. But however, from that original game, they said Leon was going to be infected with something. I think the infection was causing him to see ghosts and shit. I think that was going to be the whole angle they were going to go with. I think, again, it just got too complicated and too convoluted that they pulled back a little bit and said, all right, let's just streamline this game. And they did. And they did a good job. I like Resident Evil 4. I don't like how it's aged. Because 5, I think 5 blew it out of the water as far as everything. Maybe not in atmosphere. I mean, 4 is a scarier game than 5.
I think the story's
5
better in 4 a little bit, but I do like this.
Right.
I do like the story in 5 though because it has Wesker back,
5,
Chris
a lot of
and
people
Jill.
don't understand. 5 was going to wrap it up for those characters. And then they were going to move on.
That was
But I
definitely
think-
the vibe in that game for sure.
They told you in the magazines
Yeah.
back in the day that was going to do it. It was going to be the reunion game, and that was going to end it for those characters. That was going to end the franchise. It was going to end it for those characters. Same Mortal Kombat Armageddon said the same thing. They said this game is going to wrap it up for Scorpion and Sub-Zero, and then they make Mortal Kombat.
And to this day, people still, and I understand this, people still don't think they should have killed off Wesker because he was one of their best villains. They should have
He's dead, though.
That's the thing. That's what people are saying is that
Because
they
this
could
guy,
bring it
Spencer,
back.
I just beat 5, and Spencer said you're the last living Wesker child, and I'm like, I think they added somebody else.
You have
right?
Alex Wesker in Revelations 2 that Barry had to fight, and Barry was like, "Oh no, another Wesker." He made that little reference there. But that's the thing is that they do acknowledge that. But like you said, was that the real Wesker that they killed in the volcano? That's something that fans still talk about to this day. Is that could be a clone?
Yeah, did he jump on that jet?
Right.
And is he the one that fell out of the jet?
That's what a lot of people are saying. So there's a lot of possibilities of them bringing it if they ever want to bring it back and have some kind of like reunion game and maybe not have it end in a volcano because that was a little
Nightmare on
like
Elm Street 4,
you know.
the night right behind you's Freddy, right? The Nightmare on Elm Street 4 DVD has a tagline: "Evil never really dies," and that's the way you got to look at it. So, look, if they bring them back, they'll bring them back. Like, they don't care. Resident Evil. It's so bitch slapped, convoluted, upside down, inside out the storyline. I think that's why they're making these remakes, to streamline the story, because they know they screwed up. They've had several different writers over the years, several different directors.
It's always different people coming in, right?
That's what I'm saying. Like, throughout the year, I mean, this franchise is going to be 30. You've had several different teams,
It's massive. It's bigger than it's ever been. It's crazy.
People in the company, you know, CEOs and all that stuff. All these people come in and go. This story's always changing.
Did you like?
Unfortunately,
Well, I was gonna say, because did you like the? You know, obviously, I mean, I know you liked it, but the era of the GameCube Resident Evils, when you saw the remake, I remember you were saying that you bought a GameCube just for that game, right?
so I had bought the GameCube at launch, but then the Xbox was coming out and it had WWF Raw. I was like, I gotta get the machine for that and Raw. Raw didn't come out until a couple of months after, but I was like, I gotta get the Xbox. So when Raw comes out day one, I could go get that. That game sucked, Raw. But in the meantime, I got Halo, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. I didn't expect that. So then when Resident Evil 2 Remake was announced that it was coming out, I was like, day one, I'm going to get a GameCube. Got my car. This was 20 years ago. Went to Software Etc. on White Plains in the Galleria. Brought whatever my trades were in. Trades are in. Whatever. I don't even know what that means. I brought all my trades into Software Etc. Traded everything in. Got the machine. Got the game. I still have both to this day. I still have the same exact in the box and everything.
That's cool.
And there you go. I think it was the best game on the GameCube, in my opinion. But I think, and a lot of people will remember this if they were around back then, the messaging was mixed because Nintendo made it seem like they were remaking all of the games. And then when they released 2 and 3, we were like, oh, I thought they were just remaking these.
He was saying that he felt like he didn't do enough to change Remake. He felt like after it was done, he should have changed it even more. But
well, you know what? He could come back and change it again soon. Because
I was gonna say,
mind another one.
Some people are saying, that's what I say. Some people really want to see a remake of Resident Evil 1 again. I wouldn't mind seeing it, but here's the thing.
This guy.
It's one of those things where, like, I think Remake is still the best Resident Evil remake, and I'm talking about the GameCube 2002. Like,
right.
You know, obviously remastered a bunch of times on every platform now, but for a while it was only on GameCube. Back when I played it on the channel, it was still only on GameCube at that time. And I think it was just, I remember seeing the cover and case at, you know, EB Games or GameStop, and it was like, I was like, wow, that's crazy. You know, Jill in the dining room, and it looked all redone. I was like, that I didn't even know they did this, you know? And I remember playing it, and I mean, that was like when I actually got scared. I was like, this is scary, because Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, you know, I played growing up as, you know, just a younger kid trying to kind of grasp my head around, you know, gaming, just trying to get better at games. And I never was really, like, scared of Resident Evil, even though there'd be tense moments or Nemesis chasing you would definitely be a little crazy and creepy at times, for sure, when he's on your ass. But Remake was like the lighting, the sound effects, like Lisa Trevor moaning behind the door. I mean, there's so many, like, weird, crazy things that just, like, are amplified. And I think that was definitely, you know, again, I understand that, like, he might have felt that he didn't change it enough back then, but I think that was, like, perfection what they did with that remake. It's still to this day. Zero, obviously, yeah, I don't really feel strong about Zero gameplay wise. I don't like the item box, and like you said, some of the story stuff's a little whacked out. It doesn't really line up as well. Like, you're not gonna tell me that all happened before the first Resident Evil. Like, that wasn't there, like, originally. So they had to kind of make it, you know, if that came out on N64, that would have been interesting if Zero originally came out as planned on N64.
I'll go back to Zero real quick. Zero, it was cool. It was coming out. Then we got it, and me and my friends, we were like, dude, the controls are all over the place. It seemed like a cool concept between switching back and forth, but it was our least favorite for that. I liked how you could drop the weapons and pick them up or whatever. But the problem was you always had to backtrack if you wanted to do that. So I think maybe that should have been optional.
Right.
Capcom is starting to learn that people want options now, which, a little too late to the party, but thank you. So that was my least favorite. I didn't even beat that game to this day. I have it on PC. I have it on all the consoles.
Yeah.
I might run through it on on one of my streams because I've been running through. I ran through Remake like 8 times this past week.
That's cool.
Moved on to 5, beat 5 today.
Were you just kind of in the mood to play some Resident Evil?
Yeah, and I wanted to play Remake because I haven't played it in so long. I haven't played through the whole game in so long.
So you kind of had to get your bearings again and kind of remember where stuff is, and like sometimes I always get the remake and the first game confused, so I always
Same.
it still happens to me. Like I'll be like, what version am I playing again?
And I'm like, where does this even go? And then I beat the game. I'm like, well, I didn't even use it.
Yeah, it's pretty much it's so dumb because in the remake it's like you just use it there to just use the other 3 that are right there just to get the Magnum. That's like all it is. It's not even like you have to.
Oh, I don't even remember.
Yeah.
I gotta get the Magnum. I missed the Magnum.
Right.
That was my favorite gun in the original.
Right. So all you have to do is just turn the crest over, click the button, and the things will come out. Put it in, and then do the same for all the 3 that are right there, and then you'll get the Magnum. Yeah. It makes you think that you have to, because again, it gets confusing. You play all the Resident Evils, and it's like, what am I playing again? You play them inside and out, and even it's still confusing.
And Resident Evil Remake and Zero Remake, or Zero, it wasn't a remake.
Yeah, it was a 0.
It kind of was, but it wasn't.
It was on the
Anyway.
same engine, basically.
On consoles, it's locked at 30 both games. Well, on the jailbroken PlayStation 4, there's a patch that 60 FPS, no issues.
Thank God for modders, man.
Well, the games can do it, but the INI file is like locked up. Because on PC, both games are at 60, no problem.
Right.
I don't know why Capcom locked the frame rate on here. I beat the entire game. There were no dips. It was great. So I don't know. That's why I'm going to try to run through Zero on here. Usually I would hook up my Alienware Alpha and play the Steam versions because they're in 60 FPS. Now I'm using this thing. I have no issues. So, kind of upsetting there because I do have it on PlayStation
We bought it a bunch of times.
on my 4 account and my Xbox account, and it just locked at 30, and
Yeah.
I don't like that. Yeah, we did buy it a bunch of times. We even imported it before they released
Yep,
it.
bought it on PS3, and then it came out in early January 2014 for or 15. Yeah, it was like January 2015 for it was on PS4 and Xbox. It was on 360 and PS3 first, and then it was out on. They had a weird release for that, but yeah.
Those definitely can't run at 60, but I mean the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One versions,
They could have
they can run
easily,
at 60.
yeah.
That game isn't that intense that I couldn't do it. Anyway, that's a little pet peeve of mine, but I got it to work. Anyway, going back now, the Dreamcast ports, yeah, weren't those like the PC versions, just
Yeah,
like the Windows CE versions?
pretty much. I mean, Resident Evil 2 had Nightmare Mode, which is an exclusive mode. Resident Evil 2 obviously had the battle mode and stuff like that as well. That was also in Director's Cut, or not Director's Cut, the DualShock version of Resident Evil 2. Sorry.
Right, Extreme Battle Mode, yep.
Yeah, and then Resident Evil.
They put Chris Redfield in it. That's why I ran out and bought DualShock
Yes.
edition.
Yes, they did. They actually had a whole model for him and everything, which is funny because
Yeah.
he's not in the game besides of mention and his diary. But then Resident Evil 3, you could select all of Jill's costumes from the start, just like the PC version. The PC version included a couple different extra costumes. I remember getting that, running it on my Dell, 2001. It came out in 2001. I remember my dad bought me that copy. Again, was probably just like, why are you buying it on PC? But I regret not having that long box. Like, one of the things that I regret losing the most in the move, and I don't even know if it's still around, but it is that Resident Evil 3 in the box. I mean, if you have that box, you're looking at $800 if it's complete. I mean, I can only find the jewel case. I can't even find a picture of the box, the US
I
box.
remember.
And it was big. It opened up. It had the artwork. And
EB Games and Software Etc. carried those games.
I'm kicking
for
my
PC, and they
ass
were big
for
bucks.
for not. I don't know what happened. I don't know how I didn't keep it with my other RE stuff. Maybe because it was downstairs because it was on the computer. I kept it there, but man, I don't know what happened to that thing. But I remember getting that, and I was like, holy shit! You can select all the costumes from the start. And the Dreamcast version was just like that. But I got the Dreamcast stuff later. I remember seeing them in the stores, but I never bought them. But then I found them, back before they really shot up in price, probably for like $20 a pop, $30 a pop for the Dreamcast. And
I found them all at Goodwill. Was it like not even 10 years ago over here? They were $1.99 a piece.
yeah, it's very
Even
cool.
though I had them already, but I got extras, and I was like, oh, all right, cool.
Yeah, and it's got the VMU health, which is cool.
That was a good thing for Code Veronica. That was one of the features.
Yeah,
was you could see your health on the VMU.
Code Veronica did that. Yeah, that's the thing too. It's like it was like Code Veronica when that came out, and then I think they just ported the other ones kind of later, and then the GameCube ones came out in like 2003, and they looked not as good as the Dreamcast versions, but again, and they didn't also have the same features either. Like you couldn't select all of the stuff from the start. Like it was very different. But with Resident Evil 4, like when that hit, and obviously that was like that kind of transcended during that time. Like you said, that was delayed for years. That really was like it was kind of like people were waiting forever for that. And like you said, a lot of people even called Code Veronica RE4 back in the day.
Well, we didn't know because we thought it was going to be 3, and then out of nowhere 3 came out. We're like, okay, I guess that's 4 then.
Yeah,
but it's not called 4.
But it's like a mainline game. Yeah,
Hollywood does this thing where they don't want to call stuff 4 because they don't want to be embarrassed. But then they'll call the next one 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yeah,
It's like they have a hatred for 4.
Right.
So we thought they were pulling that stuff, but I guess not. So Resident Evil 4, it came out January of 2005. I was working at Best Buy at the time, and I remember calling and telling the guy that worked there, I was like, "Hey, I'm going to be there in a few minutes. I'm going to pick it up." Still have that copy. It was a great game when it came out.
Oh yeah.
It didn't really age well, obviously. I think anybody that plays it today will tell you that.
I could still play it though. I don't know. Like I feel like I could still easily slip back in and play it just like RE5, where it's still very like on that same line of controls. It's not like as smooth as obviously the remakes perfected
what it is, man? That right stick kills me because it's just a look.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not a turnaround, and it just drives me nuts. It's like, and it's dull. It's like gritty. It's there's too much brown.
Right. The HD project, man, works wonders. I know it's a fan edit, but I'm telling you, man, that is the best.
Yeah, I remember that. We did that last year or the year before. Yeah. It was fantastic.
Right.
Like, that guy deserves all the props for that. But, I mean, you know what, man? When I heard they were remaking 4, I was like, really? 4? And then going back and playing it, I was like, yeah, this needs to be remade. Like, my theory, I think they're remaking these Resident Evil games to pretty much coincide with where they're going with 7 and Village.
That's what a lot of people are thinking.
This way it streamlines everything, and going forward they have a clear path. You don't have to worry about this guy that they mentioned in the original.
Yeah, they kind of ignore. Yeah, when they ignore certain characters, they definitely ignore certain characters. It's kind of like one of those things where like when it didn't work writing wise, they were like, oh yeah, let's just not bring that guy up again. Something like that seems to happen a lot.
Because again, another team came up with that character. Maybe the new team is like,
like Jake, right? In RE6. Like, have you ever seen Jake after that? Like, you never saw Jake after RE6, and then he just kind of walked off and he was gone. Supposed to be a son of Wesker, but they never continued that.
That's where the whole mess started with 6.
Yeah.
Because listen, a lot of people that are watching this right now think I'm nuts, but Resident Evil 7, without telling you, was a remake.
Or reboot, even.
It was a reboot.
Yeah.
It was a remake. It was a reboot, yes. They highlighted the 7 just so you'd be like, so old fans would come in. But that was totally a reboot. That's why Chris doesn't look like Chris at the end.
Right.
because it's a different Chris. That's why he says I'm Redfield,
Oh yeah.
because it's to tie in the fact that it's a reboot.
I've been trying to stand by that
have-
statement for a while, because
Chris Redfield he's in the game, but he's not. It's not the OG Chris.
right. It puts you back in a house. It gives you a set
He's
amount
in
of
Blue
keys.
Umbrella, not because BSAA screwed everything up. No, he's in Blue Umbrella because that's Umbrella in that universe. You know what I mean? Like they twisted all that stuff around. If you play that game, and I had streamed it about a year ago, and Richard was in the chat room with me, and it was just me and him because it was late at night, and we were looking at all the sections, and we're like, dude, this is totally like a rip on the original game. And he's like, I never saw it like that. Now I'm starting to see this stuff. And we're going back and forth. And we caught it. We're like, this is a remake. This is a reboot.
Yeah, they
completely a reboot
played
of
it
the
safe.
franchise.
They were like, look, we're gonna make it in VR. We're gonna make it first person. We're gonna have these characters that
It's a completely different
are
story.
clean. Like
it
you
has
don't know.
the house. It has the
Ethan,
the horror.
Mia, it has the Bakers. They're all new. And look,
But if you look at it, you have the basement.
right.
The save room is right by the basement, like in the original. And then you have the keys,
Yes.
which are representative of the old keys, but they're not, obviously they're not the same. Like you got the Scorpion key, but you had the shield key in the other one.
Now you have the snake key and the in 7. It's like the snake key and the
Right.
whatever. They had a few others, but yeah, it's like they all have different sections that you have to unlock and do, and then you go back and do this section of the house. You go outside and you do Marguerite's section in the back, and then you do the Lucas section. It's all like different. I think 7, and the thing is I have liked
The
7.
typewriter is now the tape
The
recorder.
tapes, right? Especially, and to your point, I do like 7 over Village because I think 7 at least brought things back to
Right.
to grounded territory. It wasn't like explosions and RE6 and like all these crazy different, like 4 campaigns, sensory overload. Like
Well,
it
look
brought
at-
things back a bit to
Look at the point of 7.
Right.
The point of 7 to escape the house. By the time you get out of the house, you find the lab, you find all this other stuff. It's completely a callback to being a reboot of the original. A lot of people didn't pick up on. I didn't pick up on that,
no.
but we all
We
played
kind of
the game thinking
unraveled
was
it through the
7.
years, like okay, that's where they were kind of going with it because
Well, we all played the game like, why is everything different? Why does Chris look like this?
It
It's
was
a different
jarring,
Chris.
right? It was jarring at that point because we weren't expecting to see Chris look like how he did in RE6, and then he looked like a complete, doofus and that, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, he did.
But and they changed it because of that. Again, listening to fan feedback, they literally changed his design because people didn't like how he looked, but also because they were connecting the games.
They decided to connect the games because
It was
I think
successful.
What happened was they didn't realize that people didn't catch on that it was a reboot. So, and again, this is where Capcom always steps in the trap. Now they try to put this as canon. And again, now that's going to be a hamper. Now we're going to reboot and remake 7 when it comes out. Like,
Well, do you
I
think
wouldn't do that.
I
I'd
mean,
leave it alone.
that's a good point, right? It's like do you think that
They fell in the trap that they always fall in. They should have kept 7. They shouldn't have been stupid. Look, it was a reboot because they turned around and put the little 7 in the letters, but they never flat out said it was Resident Evil 7. You know what I mean?
they called it Resident Evil Biohazard
Called Resident
or
Evil
Biohazard Resident Evil in Japan. They literally
Because
just kept it.
It was the reboot.
They're bringing it back around. Yeah.
We're bringing it back around. 6 had like bitch slapped a franchise. We call that Gears of Evil.
Right.
Because it's like a poor man's Gears of War with Resident Evil.
It was
characters.
like an identity crisis, and there's parts
Yeah.
of 6 that obviously I do enjoy, but a lot
I
of that
like
game,
the multiplayer.
Right.
I thought the online multiplayer was fantastic.
Mercenaries was fun, co-op was still fun in that game, but I think after Leon's campaign is when it really just started to go more downhill, and I just think it really just kind of like struggled for an identity. And I know there's people nowadays that do like champion that game and stuff like that, or they really like it. And again, that's fine. You're entitled to your own opinion. There's people that think 7 or Village is the best RE game. And who am I to say it's a community? Everyone can have their own, slice of the pie how they want it. You know what I mean? Resident Evil comes in all shapes and sizes. You have the fixed camera angles, you have the old school stuff, you have, the over the shoulder, and you got your first person stuff. And, playing 7 in the VR, and it's the VR that you sold me and everything. So, I always like to mention that because I finally got one from you when it was kind of like right before, well, I wanted to do it before Village, but then we obviously had to get it, figured out. And then once that got worked out, I played it in VR, and that's when I really understood, how 7 was supposed to be really set up. Like when you really see it in the VR headset, you see it from, okay, that's why this scares here. That's why all this placement's here. It has, that Evil Dead kind of vibe to it as well. It puts you in that, like, that isolated feel again, especially in the VR headset. I thought it was very effective. Now, again, the fact that that PSVR can give me, motion sickness if I use it for a long time. That's just a me problem. I know that the Oculus doesn't do that as easy apparently, but I think being able to see it and sit with 7 for a while does make me appreciate it a little bit more, because when you play Village, I didn't really vibe with Village as much, and it kind of went too far off the chain of Resident Evil. Obviously, 7 kind of started that because you had Evelyn, and it was more supernatural, and it kind of messed with that a little bit. You saw how the Bakers was pretty much infected and taken over by this little girl that they took in, and they were once innocent. So it kind of,
That proves more of the point that it is a reboot. Because it's got its own thing going on. Everything mixed in, but it's got its
just
own
no
thing
zombies.
going on.
It had the molded. It had, their own.
Because guess what was still around? Dead Rising was still going on when 7 came out.
It was. You're right.
It was still a franchise.
That is a good point.
A lot of people don't get this. A lot of people give Resident Evil 5 a lot of hate because there's no zombies. It's not scary. Okay, in Japan, the game's called Biohazard. It's a biological outbreak. So
the name does make more sense in Japan.
It makes more sense in Japan.
Yeah.
So 5 fits, but the problem with 5 was Capcom mandated Resident Evil's a big enough name where we don't need zombies for it. Let's throw the zombies in Dead Rising to help Dead Rising. And Dead Rising, they went a little too overboard, like Capcom games sometimes do.
They gave it to different developers that kind of took out the core of what Dead Rising was, and I was a big fan of Dead Rising 1 and 2. I still would like to play 3. I've never fully played 3, but after
I think
that,
after
they
Dead
changed
Rising
it.
4 came out, like once the sales numbers, I think that first weekend, Capcom saw the sales numbers were like nowhere near they expected.
Oh yeah,
they were done with it.
I'm pretty sure it was
franchise.
it was the Canadian branch or something of that they gave it to, and that ended up being a different developer that had a different idea in mind, and that didn't really go, like you said, with what Dead Rising was.
Capcom games, at some point, a majority of them get too wonky, and then they got to go back. Like Resident Evil, it went off the rails.
Right.
I understand what they did with 6. They wanted to make Resident Evil 6 the biggest Resident Evil game, the summer blockbuster game.
And it sold very well like a blockbuster. It did sell well. That doesn't mean that the content within the game was Chris and Leon versing each other, squaring off. Like, you felt that was going to be a big thing because you saw them aiming the gun, but then it barely was really anything at the end of it. Obviously Vendetta, they worked together in that CG movie, but that was like years later. You know what I mean? Years later. So...
this 6, I think it was like the culmination of like Resident Evil, the franchise, with the summer blockbuster type game. They wanted to make that the biggest one, and you got to give them credit for that. But at the end of the day, it just didn't work out. They lost what Resident Evil was, and unfortunately, I think they're doing that again with Village. They're going off the rails again. It's like Capcom, they do a good job, and then they get so excited that they just go off the rails. And they, like when I played Village, even Frank, he was like, a lot of this stuff is from D&D. Like a lot of the characters are exactly the same from D&D. Like the people in the dungeon with the cloths.
Oh yeah, yep.
Those are exactly the castle. Looks like
very
it's from
gothic
D&D.
horror and takes, it tried to take the template.
I don't play D&D, but he's played a little bit of it, and
sure,
everything that he's seen, he's like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
it started to kind of draw.
He showed me books like D&D books. He goes,
Right.
look, there's the castle. And I'm like,
It drew a bigger web out to those kind of influences, but it didn't really feel like Resident Evil. I don't think the Lycan enemies, in my opinion, were effective as the Ganados in Resident Evil 4, where they had more of a personality and they were talking and they were yelling, even though they were infected with parasites. The Lycan, because a lot of people compare
Resident
Village
Evil
to 4,
6.
but it's like, no, RE4 did it better in terms of the enemies.
Resident Evil 6, I think, has the most enemy types that are least forgettable. I can't. They're all generic enemies. They look like the Insane Clown Posse. They turn into like friggin' like bugs.
The Jawavo, yeah. Yeah.
And it's just like
Jawavo are pretty forgettable. Even the Maginis in RE5 were more memorable. Like, wouldn't you say like some of the enemies in RE5 were at least a little bit more memorable?
You got memorable characters.
Like Cassella turning into the big boss on the boat, and you have, obviously Irving with the fish monster, so they kind of copied RE4 with that a little bit differently. Obviously, you're not throwing harpoons, you're shooting it off the back of a boat. But they added like the ancient ruin Maginis and stuff like that, and they added different enemy types. I did like the enemies better in 4, but like you said, it kind of tampered off with each game. They kind of became less memorable.
And I think they went off the rails with Village. But Village sold very well, so you can't argue.
It is their most
success.
successful. Yeah, it is their most successful IP.
Right.
For Capcom, Resident Evil is it right now. And like you said, 10 years ago in 2012, this conversation would be a lot different. And we were around talking back then, making podcasts, talking about the darker days of Resident Evil. And now it's obviously spun around into, all of this stuff. Do you find you're definitely finding yourself, kind of enjoying the remakes, for Resident Evil 2 and 3? I know you did enjoy both of those remakes, right? As far as even though obviously with 7 and 8 you did play and you enjoyed them, but I think with the remakes, it gives you another chance to kind of check out these games again completely from the ground up, and it's stuff that you grew up with,
I was waiting for Resident Evil 2 remake like everybody else for a long time.
Oh yeah.
And it finally happened, and I was like, yes. Then they did 3 remake. And they streamlined the game completely. And that was because originally it was going to be DLC for 2. But Capcom said, you know what? We're going to get the $60 out of this. And a lot of people got upset because they were like, oh, well, it's not the complete RE3. I get that. But at the same time, I'll take what I can get. Because I ain't waiting another 20 years for RE3 remake.
I mean, dude,
you still got the original. You still got the remake. You can play either one. I understand, though, where people are upset.
Yes.
I'm not going to take that away from anybody.
Exactly. And the thing is I understand too, because Resident Evil 3 original being like my favorite game of all time, not even just Resident Evil, the clock tower is my favorite part, and it's not in there. And same thing with Type 2 Nemesis. Like, these parts aren't in there, so I recognize those flaws.
Nemesis keeps turning into the Lion King in this game.
Right.
Until he turns into the alien.
The dog form thing was just so, like, that was not what I was expecting them to do with Nemesis. Like, Type 2 Nemesis is my favorite. I love, like, his transformation and how he goes after Carlos. Like, that whole part is awesome, and it wasn't there. And I even like the Gravedigger, and they took that out, right? So a lot of things that, I just kind of wish that they added, but I still enjoyed it as a remake. Like you said,
I did. Yeah.
Despite that, I wasn't like everyone else on the internet at the time. Still to this day, there's people that are like, hey man, I go back and listen to you and John talk about Resident Evil 3 and you guys were honest, and like I still agree with you guys. Like, there's people that are like, they're happy that we were the ones actually trying to be positive about it, because there was nobody being really positive about it in the community space as much. Like there was people that liked it.
RE3 remake suffered the same fate as RE3, ironically enough. It flew under the radar with a lot of people.
It kind of just was announced. It came out April of 2020, and it was like, it was just like
it
people
went full circle, because RE2, everyone was buying that game, the remake, just like they were all buying the original. RE3 is announced on PlayStation back in the day. Nobody flew under the radar.
Right.
RE3 remake, you could beat the game in under 2 hours for the most part. Flew under the radar.
Yeah. And that's the thing.
I'll take it, because you know what? At the end of the day, I'm getting old. I don't have time to sit here for 40 hours to play a game. So if I can run through a game, I'm happy with it. Again, I'm not going to gatekeep. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. You still got the original at the end of the day.
They're always there on the shelf.
It's going to go up. It's going to go up more in value because it's got everything in it, whereas the remake really doesn't. And you know what? I hate to break this to everybody, but in like 50 more years, they're going to remake all these games anyway.
It's like it never ends, right? So it's like just enjoy what we have now.
Enjoy what you got.
And yeah, man, I again, like you said, however you want to enjoy the remakes, you can consume them in any which way, and people can play the originals and enjoy it like that too. And I still would like to go, even going back and playing RE2 remake over the summer when they had those updates and getting the platinum really made me appreciate that game all over again, and it was so much fun. So the remakes
remake is like fantastic.
Yeah, it is an amazing game.
Resident Evil remake was my favorite remake until 2 remake came out.
So that's your favorite remake? Okay.
I love Resident Evil 1 over 2.
That's a lot of people's favorites.
I love 1 over 2 any day of the week. I like that story better.
Okay.
It's my favorite, Resident Evil 1. And the remake was my favorite. But once Resident Evil 2 remake just got everything right. And Resident Evil 1 remake got everything right too. They added the graveyard that was on the back of the box that they forgot to put in or they didn't have time to put in.
They mentioned it, but never, yeah.
they fixed a lot of stuff that needed to be fixed in that remake. But I think 2, man, they just nailed it. They nailed it from head to toe, and that was it. Like, there was nothing to go back and, oh, they should have done this, they should have done... No, they did everything they needed to do.
The only thing they didn't do successfully was the A-B scenario. Like, they put it in last minute to please fans, but it didn't connect like it did in the original. That's my only
they weren't planning it. That's
right, exactly. But that's the thing. It's like, why do it? It was kind of one of those things where it's like you said, sometimes they get too excited and they make these decisions that it's like you guys were this close, but again, still a perfect remake. It's just like Resident Evil 4, like the original. It's like, yeah, there's things that are still dated about it when you play them now, but it's still like there's no denying that revolutionized the gaming industry as people changed with. You know they looked at RE4 and was like, holy shit, what is this doing over here? And it still is it's still a perfect game in many ways, in my opinion, the original RE4. And I know some people can go back and play the originals and they could say, okay, I could say, like you mentioned, like I can see how this can be improved with the RE engine. So it's kind of cool to see that there's like, again, like it's finding a new audience and people go back and play the old games and vice versa. So we're in a completely different era of Resident Evil now. And obviously the gaming industry has changed too. So it's one of those things where it's like now we're getting stuff in a different way. And now that we get like these, DLCs and the stories and stuff like that, we're going to see where they take it now that, the 7 and 8 story are kind of like closed up now. And now we have this RE4 that it's all eyes on RE4 again, So I wonder if this is just going to come in and just sell like hotcakes, probably outsell RE2 and just take the win. You know what I mean? I wonder, because this is going to be a huge game. I mean, this looks pretty good. What are your thoughts on what you've seen so far on RE4 remake?
I haven't seen much. I've only seen whatever you've shown.
Okay.
But besides that, and by the way, obviously people are watching this channel. Stick with this channel because Anthony breaks a lot of stuff down. He covers a lot of stuff. If you want to know what's going on with the game, this is the place to be. And I'm not just saying that. This is the place to be.
Thanks,
So
man.
besides that, I've been, whatever you've been showing me, that's cool, but I've been kind of staying away from everything.
Some people are starting to do that because it's getting to the point where we're going to start seeing stuff where people are like, okay, I kind of don't want to see that.
Spoiler, Leon lives.
Right.
We all know, but it's what unfolds in between because, look, RE2 Remake added stuff we didn't expect. They streamlined a lot of stuff. Some characters are in there, some characters are different. Some characters do this, some characters do that. Sometimes they add characters, they omit characters. You know what I mean?
Right.
A lot of the characters do and do not look the same, depending on the situation. So I'm excited to play the game. Look, I again, like I said, the other one, it didn't age well. It is a good game, but it just didn't age well throughout the years.
Yeah.
I think everything's too streamlined now with the control settings and schemes and all that stuff. This game needs a remake. I think it's going to do very well. A lot of people don't realize that. Here's the thing: when 4 came out, there was a whole new generation of gamers. Like you were like in it. Whereas RE2, it's the older generation. Not sure if a lot of people that were there for RE2, the original RE2, are going to pick up RE4 remake. Maybe. I don't know. I will, but I can't speak for everybody back in the day. But your generation grew up with that game. They're all going to run out and buy that game.
Yeah, and that's the
So,
thing too. It's yeah, like you said, and I think especially with the originals, I always tell people if they can play the originals, they should, just so they can have the comparison of what came before it and have some
right.
kind of like context. If you can, obviously, I know for like 1, 2, and 3, it's harder to. Well, obviously, you got remake with 1, but 2 and 3 might have been harder to pin down and playing those original games unless you have it on an emulator. You have stuff you can play it on.
Yeah, but you know what? I'll say this, okay? In my opinion, that's an excuse.
Right.
You can emulate these games. I'm tired of these people. I need the actual disc with the actual content. No, you know what? Plug your dual
If they're
shock,
not
dual
going to do it,
sense,
yeah, just do it yourself now. You know what I
plug in
mean?
your Xbox controller, get RetroArch.
It doesn't take much to run on any,
You
computer
know what
really.
you're doing. Within 45 minutes, you're up and running.
Yeah.
And that's if you know what you're doing, you can get that up running even quicker. But I would play the original games and get a feel for it.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah, especially because RE4 is on everything. So there's
Well,
no
RE4,
excuse.
yeah, RE4 is
You
on Steam.
you
all
can
that
even
stuff.
play it on, if you want to play it in the VR, you can play that, and that could still be an experience that you can have before the game comes out. It's one of those things where it's like you can look left and right and find RE4 any which way, and definitely, experience it just to
I
see.
had it on the iPhone like 10 years
Oh
ago.
yeah, oh yeah, that's and there's so much to RE4 from that time period that I always kind of think back on. I'm like, yeah, that was a special time for gaming, and it was definitely I love that era, for sure, and it definitely changed stuff forever in terms of like the franchise, and you even started to see the movies start to influence the games, where you had the laser scene, in RE4. That was right from the first movie. I definitely like it. It's not a terrible movie, but I like that it was a hive movie. Like, it was all underground in the lab. It was isolated. That's what I liked about
Right.
it. But I obviously would I have liked to see a Spencer Mansion over that? Absolutely. I would love that, But
Well, what I didn't like was they renamed the characters, and it was obvious because I remember Mario, my buddy Mario, went to go see it in the theater 20 years ago, and I said, "What'd you think of the movie?" And he goes, "Well, they had bootleg Jill and bootleg Chris, and they kidnapped bootleg Chris and bootleg Jill is throughout the movie." It's like, why didn't you just call her Jill? Why do you call her Al?
though I think the first time I saw the movie, I thought it was Jill because I did,
It
but I
looks
didn't
like
realize
her.
it.
She's
Yeah.
even dressed like her from the third game. Only she's wearing red and not
She's
blue.
got like she's almost got like an Ada type dress on, and it's like, yeah,
Oh
it's a
no!
very.
Look at the first DVD case, or the first VHS case.
Oh yeah,
She looks like Jill from friggin' Nemesis, only in red.
right. Yeah, it's like the
Even
tube
the
top.
same haircut.
Yeah, it's very weird that they, and again, this is all like, I think Apocalypse came out, the second movie, right before Resident Evil 4, so there was a lot of cross advertising, and then you had the Outbreak games, which also came out that had the text, the
Outbreak
font.
games took the logo. Oh.
Yeah, yeah, but you can play Outbreak now online, and it's fun. So at least
The
now
logo
Outbreak.
behind me. That's the logo.
That's the best logo. I love the blood red logo.
That's the way to go.
But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that, again, that it's cool to see the franchise, come back and actually have a, just a different presence now than how it used to be, and
I want to.
they've
talk
definitely
about
worked it.
Village real quick.
Sure.
So obviously we talk about 7 being a reboot, and then Village they made it all canon. I think because people didn't understand that 7 was a reboot, and I think they just ran with this whole thing, so they connected them. I would have made Resident Evil Village a different game, in my opinion. I think it would have held up as a successful franchise on its own if it was called something else.
What about a like like a spin-off?
They could
'Cause
have made a
some
whole
people
new
say
IP.
that, right?
Yeah, they could have made what is the game called? Like Village of Shadows in the game or something? The book?
Yeah, like the book. Yeah, the book that she
You could have
reads.
called
Yeah.
the game Village of Shadows featuring Chris Redfield, and people would have ran all over that game. But they had to call Resident Evil. They connected 7 with it, so it's all canon now.
Right, they added
confused
lore.
everybody.
Yeah, they tried to add
brought
lore
back-
that wasn't there. They pretty much
They
said,
brought
"Hey,
back old Chris from RE5,
Yep.
but they used Carlos's voice, so he sounds like the
Yeah.
line from Wizard of Oz. And by the way, in RE3 remake,
Jeff Shine's awesome."
One of the worst scenes in that game, I call it the zombie mambo. When Carlos is in the hospital, and he's got basically horde mode with the zombies.
Yeah, it's like the cabin
And you
scene in
hear-
RE4 where you're just like,
You hear the mambo music, brr, brr, and it's like, what is going on? Like, and then you're stuck. You can't skip it. You have to play it.
yeah. I do like that
think
scene.
I don't like it. I think that was.
You didn't like the
something
hospital
they added
scene?
in. No, because you literally, it's like, I don't know. It's got like, and then you hear the like, bum, 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 and I'm like, what the hell am I playing?
Yeah, I mean, look, they did add a different little like changes to the hospital, how that rolled out with Carlos, because that really wasn't in there. Like the hospital scene in the original RE3 was so much more like faster paced. Where they wanted to
I don't
keep
mind.
it there.
I don't mind the hospital itself. I just don't like that one.
That like
scene
horde
where it's
mode part.
mode.
Yeah.
Because
oh, dude, that on
you got-
Inferno is a.
It sounds like
bitch.
the zombies are singing as they're attacking you, and I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Like Jeff Shine, he's a great voice actor. We had him on the show back when we interviewed him, and that was obviously back before he was casted as Chris. But a lot of people are talking about that. Like, why are they reusing the same voice actors like for such close characters?
there's a lot of reasons. There's
It's because they're going non-union. They've been going non-union for years.
it's
That's-
all
that's
the,
gone
the
public.
behind the scenes
Yeah.
stuff. It's not because they're like, oh, this guy would make a
Right.
great Chris.
They like to keep their circle. That's why they didn't get Allison Court back, because she was union, and she said on Twitter she was, years ago. But this is back before. This is when the rumblings of RE2 remake was
This is
happening.
but
She
this
said-
is stuff that happens in the movie industry, the TV
all the
industry.
time. It's out of there. That's the thing. These actors come and go,
They have
and
the
they'll
writers'
always
strike.
change.
They have all that stuff going on
Like-
all the time.
And like you mentioned, to your point earlier, it's like the franchise is almost 27 years old, going on 30. There's going to be so much changes and writing differences and like all, you know what I mean, all this other stuff. So it's like you're going to see that change kind of happen.
I know they're doing RE9 right now. What's the next remake? You think they're going to do one and release it by the 30th anniversary?
I think they could do one. I think one could
Do
easily
you really
happen.
think that 5 needs a remake right now? 5 still holds up.
5 doesn't need a remake right now, but I think 5, in that case, 5 would hold up just as much as 4, because I still think 4 and 5, I can go back and play them, and I personally think I can go back and play them without any like issues,
Yeah,
right?
but 4 really needs it. 5 kind of.
I don't know. I think 5 and 4 controls very similar in my opinion. I mean, going back and playing them recently, I played Mercs with my buddy Purple Herb, who's another content creator, and it was cool to play Mercs with him. It was a while since I jumped on 5.
5 is a lot more easier to play than 4.
It
because you got
it
that
is
other-
revamped a
other
little
analog
bit.
stick.
Yeah, you do have the other analogs. That is.
And you don't have that suitcase that every time you got to hit the button and rearrange stuff. Click the button, you're ready to go. You know what I
the
mean?
weapon case is obviously very unique to Resident Evil 4, specifically where 5 is like, okay, we need to have just the box for the co-op management.
5 is very colorful. You know what I mean? Graphically, it still holds up. Control-wise, it still holds up.
It still looks great, and I still defend
Even
it
the
to this
cutscenes
day.
are pretty good.
I was gonna say I still defend 5 to this day, because obviously it's not like the story's not 100% proof. It's not like, but it's still fun. I put thousands of hours into a co-op playing it with friends.
I'll welcome a 5 remake, but
Me too.
It's like,
I wouldn't mind if they did it next. Bring on 5. You know what I mean? Look, 1, whether they do it or not, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Would it be cool to see Spencer Mansion in the RE engine? Absolutely. But
Yes.
again, remake original from 2002 is my favorite remake still. I think it's best of show. And, I know that even if they
It's an
did
awesome
something
game.
like that, it could give, the other remakes as far as like visually,
I
a run
played-
for its money, because it's
So I
been
played-
improving each time.
I just got done playing Remake 1. Obviously, like I told you, with everything on the PlayStation here.
Yeah.
Dude, they just took the GameCube textures and stretched them out in the like widescreen. Like the backgrounds, you could tell. Like I was playing, I got the TV over here. And on the Elgato, it looks fine. But when you're playing on the TV, it's like the characters are fine. There's no issues there. But like the backgrounds and everything, because it's all pre-rendered stuff, that's got to be remade.
Yeah. Well, hey man,
Really.
that's the thing. I don't.
It really has to be at some point.
I mean,
I'm thinking by the 30th they're gonna have that out.
we're looking at a completely different scale of graphics. The RE engine, even in Village, the best thing that it definitely had in there was visually what it had going for it and how they're pushing it with RE4. The RE engine just keeps getting better. With all Capcom games, you know what I mean? Even Monster Hunter runs on it. Devil May Cry ran on it. Street Fighter's running on it. So it's like
the X Enhanced patches or whatever. Or the
yes, over the summer
for 2 and 3 and what was it?
7.
7.
Yeah.
Games look fantastic.
Yep.
So imagine if they redid the first one again.
Yeah.
And I know people don't want to hear that, but hey, it's almost the 30th anniversary.
Well, look. You brought up that point, but I think a lot of people, they'll be hoping for that. I know a lot of people want Code Veronica, but like they're going to make one before they do Code Veronica because Code Veronica just didn't sell as well. And they're trying to go for what sells right now, and the producer, came out and said, look, if the possibility comes, maybe, but that means they're going to do that like later, like after they do 5, after they do 1.
That means when the popular Code Veronica, they're going to keep in their back pocket.
Yes.
Okay? Because if they remake 1 and it doesn't sell well, they're going to be like, hey guys, I got Code Veronica.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's true, though. That's true.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Capcom knows what they're doing because 10 years ago, they almost weren't a company anymore.
A lot of internal stuff going on.
Why do you think they gave us RE2 Remake? Because they needed to jumpstart Resident Evil. They got to a point where it was just so convoluted. They're like, you know what? People are going to give us a lot of money for this game. Let's just make it.
Right.
And then that literally jumpstarted the franchise.
Yeah, it
People
brought
that
people
didn't
in.
jump on 7 jumped on Village because of the success of RE2.
And now you have fans that are people that, they'll play the remakes, but they don't really care about the main games because maybe that doesn't do it for them, but they play the remakes. So it's like there's something for everybody, whether you're a fan of, maybe you're a fan of all of it, maybe you like it all. It's all good. It's whatever you prefer.
That's why I said, man, take what you can get because if they're giving you all this content, take it.
Yeah. Because we didn't have all this crap and all the remakes and stuff coming out left and right back 10 years ago.
They gave you a third-person mode now, which I think the third-person option should have been there from day one. But
maybe in 9 it will be. In 9 maybe it will be an option.
I think you're going to get that option in 9 from day one.
Yeah, man.
I think you're going to get that because they know they divided the audience with 7, and I think they realized that due to the popularity of the remakes,
and they're over the shoulder.
Right. They had to go back and do that with Village. And it made everybody happy, I guess. I don't know.
But a lot of people seem to be enjoying it. The only thing that is a little, I talked about it in my review, was that like it does the forced first person in all the scripted events. It's not really cutscenes, but it's like it just shifts back to Ethan's face and then it goes. So that's the only thing that's weird.
They just pan the camera on the actual character.
Where the Rose DLC was built specifically for third person, so they actually had cinematics.
It plays like a third person game and it plays very well.
Yes. Yeah.
I wasn't a fan of the Annabelle doll thing at the end of it, but
the mannequins were a little creepy.
Throw that aside, the DLC was really good. It started out very horror-esque.
Yeah. Right, and that's the thing too, and I think it wrapped up what it needed to for that story, and maybe 9 will take us into, a different vibe now.
Pretty much ignore all that stuff and do its own thing.
Bring back some older characters.
I know a lot of your viewers are afraid that Chris is gonna be 150 years old and he's Shang Tsung now. I don't think you're gonna get that. I think they're gonna leave the winter storyline where it was and continue from where they need to be. I don't think you're going to get 90-year-old characters. I think you're going to be okay, everybody.
And we may get to
chill out.
Right. We may get to see what happened with, BSAA getting corrupted, because that's what happened at the end of Village. We saw Chris was like, why are BSAA here? Why do they have these BOWs? So I'm curious to see if they continue that story and say, let's, go back in time a little bit and tell the story before it jumped, 16 years later because of Rose growing older, and maybe explain what happened
Well,
exactly.
look at Jason X. It takes place in the future, and then
They go back
to
and just
Jason.
fill it in. Yeah, they just fill it in. They could do that.
They just ignored everything in Jason X. Went right back to Freddy vs. Jason.
There's so much they can do, and like you said, there's a lot of ideas and games that they probably have.
I think everybody just needs to cool their jets. It's an old term from the 90s. And I think everyone needs to just relax.
Yeah.
And when they announce what they announce, I think everyone's going to be happy. You said remake was terrifying when you were a kid.
Right.
As a teenager, kind of early. No, I was an adult. I was probably an adult when it came out. I was 19 when it came out. So I was like right at the border. That game was fucking frightening. Because you had the Crimson Heads, which they make lion noises. Well, I don't know why. Capcom's got to deal with lions.
They like lions a lot.
Some of the games, some of the enemies in the house, they make noises, random noises. There's enemies off camera that make noises. The camera angles, I think, were a lot better in Remake 1, obviously. But they're set in a way as it's got the tone of like a gritty horror-esque type deal. It's more of that tone in that game. And it fits very well. But yeah, it's a terrifying game if you're young and you don't know what the hell's going on. But like I said, even as an original player, like some of the stuff is scary.
Yeah, man. And even like the zombies in that game are terrifying. The zombies in Resident Evil 2 remake are terrifying. Like they are relentless. Like if you don't shoot them in the head like a bunch of times and make sure they're dead, they will keep coming at you. So I like that when
Lisa
they change
Trevor
up the horror.
Is scary too in the remake.
Oh yeah.
You'll hear her moaning, like you said earlier, in random spots.
Yeah.
If you're right by the house, you'll hear her moaning, even though she's not in the house. You'll hear her out there.
Oh yeah.
If you're near her, like in that towards the end, you're in that little like cave thing,
that labyrinth. Yeah, like her shrine. You find the picture of her family, and like you pretty much see where she's living in that.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's
even when you put the broken flamethrower there, she's around the corner.
Yep. She could just smack you if you're not paying attention. Like,
but you don't even see her, and you could kind of hear her.
You just hear the chains, like the shackles. Oh yeah. It was really effective.
When you're in her house for the first time and you're about to leave, and she comes home, and you're like, oh shit.
And she just smacks you and knocks you out, and then you got to wake up. Yeah. It's just little things like that. The subtle things like that really worked, and it didn't like affect the original story in the mansion. It just added to, someone who was captured and experimented on with her family. It was something that was really
that remake
creepy.
Was done with a lot of love and passion, because that, like you just said, it makes it scarier.
Yeah,
agreed. Something that was already scary. I mean, it's not scary anymore to us because we beat them at the time. But the first game is frightening because it's got the music. That demo that you gave me that one time, when you're walking, you randomly walk into a cutscene and you hear the thumping.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, fuck. And that shit keeps you up at night.
Yeah. It's just that subtle stuff, and sometimes less is more. It doesn't have to be, action this and explosions here. Like it can be just, the subtleness that works very well with horror in movies or games, and that's what keeps it scary, and again, that's why I hold that remake in such high regard for sure, just to this day. And that's cool that you're playing it recently just to kind of, enjoy it, because it's been a bit since you played it, and it's always nice to revisit something after a while.
I played it last year and I got crushed in the that room.
Oh yeah.
I didn't save, and I was like, screw this.
Yeah, sometimes if you just die, you're just like, I'm just gonna turn this off.
I just wanted to play it on a whim last year. I got all the way to that room. I forgot about the puzzle and I got squished. Or I didn't make it back in time, because you gotta keep running back
on the other side of the room.
On.
Yeah.
And I turned around and I ran towards the wall, I guess, and then boom, I got squished. And so I was like, you know what, I want to try this again. Then I was able to get the patch going for the 60 frames, and I was like, well, let's just try this out.
And you just
let's
played
see if
it.
This game breaks at some point.
Yeah.
Nope.
Played
perfect,
smooth.
so.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And like I mentioned, again, a lot of the stuff that you're allowed to do because of some of the modders that like, kind of push these consoles to their limits and is able to kind of, rework some of the game files or stuff that was
Let me
locked
tell you
out by
something
devs,
right here. The modders that do the hardware and the software, I ordered another original Xbox HDMI. It's called the Zadusa. Like, these guys are like creating all this stuff. It's crazy. They 3D printed things. They have Bluetooth controller adapters for like the CDI and the 3DO.
Wow.
You can use a PlayStation 5 controller, a Series X controller. It's crazy what you can do with these things now. And it's all because people my age have grown up and they've said, hey, I want a Bluetooth adapter for the 3DO. Okay. You can find pretty much anything now. Look at the Pico boot. It's a $5 chip. You can turn the GameCube into a freaking multimedia center.
Yeah, that's where mine is right now. You know what I mean? It's all you helped me out with that. I appreciate that. That was probably the best decision, that I've done. I mean, I got to get a couple more GameCube controllers on deck.
And you're going to do the Saturn thing at some point, the Fenrir that does the CD and the SD card.
Yeah.
You don't have to change anything. You could still play your collection.
The laser's safe, and it's like it's all good. I don't got to pull out my $100 GameCube copies every time. You know what I mean?
Like, this stuff wouldn't have existed back in the day. Like, none of it did.
Right.
But it's incredible, the technology. Like, I got an SSD in my Sega Saturn
with everything loaded up,
my games on it, ready to go. It's like a jukebox. You're playing off native hardware. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
And by the way, they are making a native Sega Saturn HDMI adapter.
Oh, man. That's going to be so killer.
Yeah.
That's going to be so killer. Yeah, man. That's the thing. Again, a lot of times this stuff gets, pretty pricey, and it's nice to have, a way to check stuff out and, also rip your library. You can rip your stuff. Like you said, make it a jukebox. So if you have your own copies you want to rip, you could do that. It's been fun to check it out. I've been really diving into it the past week,
Anybody that has a big collection, back up all your discs. Rip everything. SSDs are dead cheap now. You could buy a 500 gigabyte SSD for $20.
Yeah, especially around the holidays, they're always on sale. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just grab as much as you can, back everything up. Even if you own everything legit, still back it up. There's bit rot. I've seen it happen personally. I had a bunch of GameCube games. I bought them day one, brand new from the stores. Half of them don't work anymore.
Yeah, that actually happened to them. That did happen.
And they look brand new.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just whatever it was. It just stopped working. And I take care of my stuff. My stuff's not all scratched up or anything. So it's just the temperatures, the condensation, all this stuff. Sometimes it just gets to the discs, and that's it. These discs aren't printed on anything special. A lot of people don't understand that. The companies are literally spending one penny.
They're mass manufacturing these things, yeah.
And it's not like you're buying a big quality disc. So I would say, for your own sake, everybody listening, back your stuff up. Even if you plan on keeping your collection, that's cool. But make sure you back it up.
Because that's a good point.
Eventually, you're going to want to play this stuff. One day, it's not going to be there.
That's true. And it's always good to have a backup of a backup, because if you don't have it twice, you don't have it. So you always got to have it.
Get a bunch of SSDs. They're getting cheaper. And then just back up those SSDs every year.
Absolutely. Just build a library of hard drives. I mean, we all have to do it at some point. Well, we all have a bunch of shit we have to back up, whether it's files or rips or movies or, it's like we're all multimedia, consumers. So we need to have a bunch of hard drives around,
At the end of the day, at the end of life for the consoles, I would suggest you guys jailbreak them, back up your stuff. If you want to collect your discs, put your discs away. And just run your stuff that way. I mean, I don't know what else I could tell people. They can do whatever they want. People can play off the disc cracks. A lot of games are going for a lot of money now. Like Sega Saturn. Like, you got Resident Evil on Sega Saturn. What is that? It was a $300 game last year. Right. I don't even know what it is now.
I don't even know.
If you take it out of your Saturn and drop it, and it gets all scratched up, guess what? You're around $300.
Yeah. But if you rip it and you can kind of keep it away.
Keep it on your SD card or whatever that's in the Saturn, or your SSD or whatever. you can leave your copy on the wall and leave it there. It's not piracy. You're not distributing it to anybody. You're not selling it. If
Yeah.
it's your own personal stuff,
You own it. Yeah. You
you own it. Chill out. Do what you got to do. Relax. Play games. Have fun. All
Just
right.
enjoy it. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I was just gonna say. So we have a couple questions here though from the supporters of the show here. This first up is from Jeff Grun. What's up, man? He's a YouTube member, and his question was favorite cutscene in an RE game. I'll let you go first. Do you have a favorite cutscene from the original, maybe the second one?
Game.
I feel like it might be from the first game for you, but I know that's your favorite.
First cutscene. You know, I would go. I mean, does it count? Like the intro movie?
Oh yeah, I mean that would be a cutscene. You know, I'd say so. I mean that's kind of like an intro, basically intro scene. It's just a live action
intro scene, cutscene. Let's give him another answer here. The intro movie for sure. I don't know if that's really classified though as a cutscene, but
I think it's safe to say.
Cutscene.
Maybe something in RE2, maybe RE3. I know what mine is. I mean, most people know what mine is.
Is it the Brad one in RE3?
That is honestly, that's probably one of my favorites, right next to the Raccoon City destruction. Like that, you know, just because it kind of closed the whole trilogy. Once Raccoon City got destroyed, you know, I always love that ending cutscene to 3. That's probably my favorite. But yeah, that Brad scene is probably a runner up, to be honest. I think how Brad died in the original was more effective than in the remake, but
yeah, for sure. Okay, I'll give you the intro of 1 and 2.
Okay. The intro too, especially, that was like, that's when as soon as you saw that truck explosion, you're like, yo, this shit's getting real, like immediately. I mean, obviously they're running from the zombies and the zombies in the back of the car. There's just so much like great seeing it from the perspectives, like how they go into the city when you put each disc in and seeing how they go in, like, and seeing that cutscene connection was just really cool.
I'll tell you what my worst cutscene is for 1.
What's that?
When you unlock the door and go in the hallway upstairs, and Barry's like, "Oh, here's some acid rounds." It's like, I don't want your acid rounds. I don't have room for them. You're making me having to go back and put these things back in the crate. I don't want them.
Yeah,
so screw that cutscene.
Yeah, if you can avoid that if you meet him before then, and then he won't. If you meet him for the room for the Jill sandwich room, I don't think he'll be up there. You know,
no, he's up there.
He's still up there. Okay, so
I did it like 3 times.
I think there's a way you could meet him out by Forest, and he won't be in the hallway. I think there's a way you could do that first, and he won't be up there. Someone will correct me on that, but I think there's definitely a way to not. But I know what you mean. He's just like, here's a gift, and it's like, I don't got room for this, man.
Oh, by the way, for director's cut, that was a big sell too. There was a trailer, and it shows Forrest get up as a zombie, and that really scared the shit out of people. And that's what helped sell that game a little bit as well. That's probably my favorite cutscene in director's cut.
Okay, so Forrest. Yeah, I like I do like the intro scene to 1 as well. I think that live action scene is just iconic, even though obviously some people be like, yeah, it's cheesy and whatever, but that's just all effective,
we had back
man.
then.
Yeah, that's all they had, and especially with those like actual CG cutscenes, it was very minimal back then. They obviously got better with 2 and 3.
That's what made you want to go out and buy a PlayStation.
Exactly.
You're like, wow, they got real people in it. Sega CD did that.
Yeah.
To an effect. But that was just like, you know, that was an add-on. That wasn't the whole console. It wasn't the whole shebang. PlayStation was like making a statement. They were like, okay, here's a game. We have the technology. We're going to have real people on this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And that's the thing too. It's like, you know,
they did it better.
They really did. They really tried to push what they were doing and again, sell it. And like I said, even though it was better in color and we got it in black and white for obvious reasons, but
it was still better in black and white.
It was still cool.
You know what? The
Remind me of Night of Living Dead.
Night of Living Dead, Twilight Zone. Like,
oh, yeah.
It just like, it worked. Even though they were doing it to disguise the blood, it still worked. It was still like horror-esque. So they knew what they were doing. That was good stuff.
Oh yeah. Now, I appreciate that, Jeff. Thank you for that question. This next one up is from Survive This. This is John. He's asking if they were to announce a Revelations 3, if it was going to star Sherry and Jake or Rebecca or Billy, which duo would you prefer?
None.
None? You don't like any of those characters? You're like, neither.
No, because, well, doesn't the second one end with Barry and the little girl?
Yeah,
Like
that's kind of where it ends. Yeah, well, yeah, it's like, you thought you pretty much kill Alex Wesker, and then you think that, this little girl's not going to be infected, but she is.
I'll throw you this. I would do Chris and Barry.
Okay.
Or
that's a good
Claire
answer.
and Barry. Or Chris and Claire again. Why not?
Right, because they just did Claire. Well, I mean, Claire and Barry.
Got to have Barry involved because of the kid, because he had a connection with the kid.
Exactly. Now they did. Now Claire and Barry were in the last game, but they weren't co-op partners. It was more like you had Moira with Claire, and then you had the little girl pointing out the infected for Barry. So it was kind of like they had two people, and then when you were playing this side,
why
you were
don't
with
you
them.
just have an older Moira who's not like trying to be Ellie from Last of Us with Claire again, and just like get this thing done? Because Barry's in trouble and he needs them to save him. I don't know.
Right. Claire and Chris would be kind of cool. You know what I mean? Just to give Chris some time in a game again, because I felt like he was really underwritten in Village and in 7, even with the Not a Hero DLC and everything, right? So I think there's a lot of things that I think with Jake and Sherry, I don't think we'll see them again. I did like writing that they did actually show us in 6 was pretty good, but obviously it's not going anywhere when Capcom doesn't really acknowledge it. Now, Rebecca and Billy, I would like to see Rebecca again in a spinoff. Billy, I was never really a big fan of his character.
Billy, dude, the guy got killed in the woods. Fuck that guy. All right, Rebecca, whatever.
So where Rebecca is now in Vendetta.
Nobody knows.
Well, in Vendetta, she was in there, but she's like a scientist now. She's like behind the scenes. She's not like on the front lines. Yeah, so that's kind of where they made. But again, it doesn't.
Is she bared now?
I know, right? Yeah, like in Gears of War. I know. That's kind of what she's like, oh, this is, she kind of helped them solve the mystery last time in Vendetta. It's like some Scooby-Doo shit. But it's one of those things that I think with a spinoff like Revelations 3, I would still like to see it. I still like the spinoff series. I thought Rev 2 was better than 1. I still like Rev 1. But yeah, I would say maybe a combination of, Claire and maybe Chris, or even if they did something like with Rebecca, I wouldn't be too pissed about. But I think
I don't mind the Rebecca thing, but Billy, get him out of here.
Yeah, Billy, I'm not really too big on Billy. I've never been big on them bringing him back. But
that guy sucked. Okay, I don't care. That's Call of Duty Billy over there. Fuck that guy.
With his one handcuff around his hand.
Yeah, he was killed in the forest. Somebody ate him.
It's so funny. I love the theories online about like where he is, and
who cares?
Yeah, it's so funny.
He met some friggin' 800-pound lady and they got married and they fucking moved away. Fuck that guy.
Now,
don't worry, I'm fat, so it's okay.
It's Capcom's thing of bringing in characters. They don't always continue these characters, and they don't really have a plan for them. So it just kind of falls by the wayside. But that's just
gunshot, huh? Maybe Wesker got him.
Right. I mean, the gunshot.
Oh, whoa. No, that doesn't make sense because she didn't get in the mansion at the time. I was gonna say that. What if that was a gunshot from the opening of the first game?
That's what it's supposed to be. That's what I thought it was supposed to be. But like you said, it doesn't really make sense. She wasn't in the mansion. So like, and would you hear it from that far? I don't. Maybe I don't know. That's still one of those things I scratch my head about. I wonder what they intended with that. But yeah, it's Zero is one of those games.
Maybe Rebecca killed him on the way out.
Yeah. Rebecca was the traitor all along. We didn't know it. She duped everyone. But
she's like, "Oh, you're actually gonna leave me?"
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. Thank you, John, for the question. And the last question here we got. So we only got 3 questions, but thank you guys for who saw the post. I know. I thought we were gonna get more. I tried to put this out a week ago, and some people liked it, but they didn't actually leave comments. But that's fine. Maybe next time I'll try to get comments from like if we do a live chat thing. But Shadow Man is another YouTube supporter. And he's saying, if they did bring Jill back, what timeline would it be in? Would it be after Rose or after Village? I feel like the OG characters will be a lot older. Want to hear your guys' thoughts on it. So he's talking about between...
I don't think you have anything to worry about. I think that Rose stuff is all done.
And you think they're just going to fill in that time that...
They're going to fill in that time. I don't even think
so
they're going to worry
too.
about that. Because, again, we talk about this. I believe 7 was a reboot. And I don't know why they connected this to Village. But they did, and I think they just want to get out of Village. That's why I didn't make a third game. They gave it a DLC because it sold well. I think the DLC was like a thank you to supporting Village or whatever, even though they charged you for it. But that's fine.
Right.
Again, options, you can buy it.
Yeah, and they never said it was free. I know a lot of people online still think they said it was free.
Besides the Annabelle, the doll shit in that DLC, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I thought it was really good. I think that was their way of saying, thank you, we're wrapping this up. Like, we're not extending this to another game. Because we didn't plan on doing that to begin with, but we did, and here we go. Boom. I think you're going to get whatever's after Resident Evil 6-ish. Not in that timeline, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, they'll try to fill in
what's
what's
just forget about
characters.
the Baker thing and the Winters thing.
The Evelyn shit. Let's just worry about the older characters, bringing it back.
Now,
zombies
they could
maybe?
do like you said. Yeah, they could do what you said. They could have Chris find out what's going on with the BSAA or whatever. Maybe they'll just do that. That would make the most sense.
Right, because how did Jill and Chris made that to go against, all the other companies that were pretty much for, all of this BOW, storylines and these people creating all these viruses that's been going on for years. How does that get corrupt? So I want them to fill that in. Like, how did...
Maybe they will, maybe they won't.
Right.
It depends on where
you don't know, right? Like, that's the common theme we've been talking about tonight. It's like, sometimes they continue stuff. Sometimes they get all kind of buck wild and crazy, and they don't really know what's going to happen with these characters down the road, so they don't really bring
maybe they'll
certain
do
things
another
back
6
around.
Where they'll have the blockbuster of the summer and bring everybody back.
Like,
Who the hell knows?
like
We
you
don't
said,
know.
right? Like, Village was pushing it in a more, like, action-oriented direction, and I don't want them to continue that. I like them to still scale it back to what 7 was trying to do. But yeah, it's very cool to see, like, different people's kind of interpretations of where they can take it, because like you said, they can really go anywhere with filling in that time.
I think it's like the Jason X deal. Like, they went back and did Freddy vs. Jason, which is like 100 years before that or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think you have anything to worry about. I think the characters are going to be fine. It's going to take place either after Village or it's going to take place before that. They're going to sweep that under the rug. Who knows? I don't know. I don't see them doing a 60, 70-year-old friggin' Jill Valentine in Resident Evil 8.
Yeah, I don't think they'll just be
9 or whatever.
You know what I mean? I think they'll fill... I think they'll fill that in pretty well.
I think everybody needs to just chill, have a good time, relax.
Enjoy the remake, right? Because that's coming out next for RE. And,
enjoy RE4, and then
we'll see what's
sure
next. Yeah.
At some point in 2023, maybe at the end, maybe at next year's Game Awards, they'll show you a trailer for RE9.
Could be at this E3, because E3 is happening this year. So it could be there.
E3 could be a Tokyo Game Show next year.
Yep, because they broke RE7 at E3. That's where they broke that. Village broke at like a RE, live stream thing, but it was still, or maybe it was a PlayStation stream.
The announcement's going to be quick after 4's release because they want that hype.
Yes, strike while the iron's hot.
That train.
Yep, definitely. They got to keep that momentum up.
They're going to have something for you.
Absolutely, and
I don't think. I think people are just panicking.
Right.
With this 80-year-old Chris and 80-year-old Joe. Just chill out. There's plenty of stories to tell in between. And this Rose thing isn't definitive anywhere. We've seen plenty of movies and games.
Oh yeah.
Do this type of thing. Look at Jeepers Creepers too, right? At the end of the movie, he's 100 years old sitting next to the creeper so he doesn't escape. And I'm watching. I'm this is the stupidest thing ever.
Right, because he's gonna get out anyway. What I mean?
It's you're telling me they're not gonna do a third film because this guy is next door for 100 years. I haven't seen any of the other movies,
Right.
but I'm sure that
Oh,
guy
I heard
didn't
bad things
escape.
about the last one. I heard it was like laughably bad CGI, like really
Well,
bad.
I don't think the old man is still there.
Apparently,
At
he failed. He
100
did not.
years
He
old.
did not protect the community like
But
he
they
said he
showed you the
would.
cutscene at the end that he's still next to him.
Yep. He's sitting there with the harpoon gun, just sitting there waiting.
Yeah, waiting every single day.
I was like, what a dumb ending.
Obviously, the third one didn't go there, right?
Right. And the third one was made like 12 years later or something like that. So I
That's
don't
the
know
only
why.
other movie besides Jason X I could think of. But I'm sure there's plenty of other films where
Yeah.
they tell you the future and then it's not. I guess the Terminator movies, right? They were all
Right.
bullshit.
They just go back and just keep retconning this one and that one, you know?
This is what happens to you, John Connor. And then the next movie, oh yeah, that guy lied. That doesn't happen. It's like Uncle Bob is a complete liar in Terminator 2.
That doesn't
If
happen.
if you really want to go there.
Yeah, it's like, dude, that's the thing with these franchises that go on for a while. It's like there's always going to be, you know, the crazy stuff that they continue or go back and change, you know, different eras that people like, you know. But I think that's kind of part of it. I think everyone kind of has their pockets of you know, of Resident Evil that they like, one over the other.
There was the West Wing. The West Wing showed you they did like 5 years later. And they showed the guy there, but the guy died in real life. So they did like a future episode in like season like 4 or something.
Mm.
But in like season 5 or 6, the guy died in real life.
Oh wow.
So that, and they did the episode where like, oh, he died, whatever. They killed the character off, but it's like, but you already showed the character in the future.
Yeah.
In the previous season.
It's like you future-proofed them.
That's what I'm saying. Like, what's the deal? Like, this stuff happens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. It's like they future-proof Chris because we know he's still alive at the end of the Rose DLC. He's still alive. So if he's in any game,
that's the thing. Like, they could change their mind at any moment. Like,
Yep.
obviously, the guy dying in real life was a sad situation.
exactly.
Deal,
that's a bad situation.
Now that episode doesn't even like
it doesn't hold any weight
canon
anymore, right?
It's
and it can happen.
They have to turn around and say that was a dream or something.
Because, like you said, man, like always different people coming in. It's not always the same team every time. You know, we see this all the time. It does change, and you know, but that's and it was really cool to, you know, again, like kind of going back and talking about gaming in the 90s and how it was. It was really cool to kind of take a step back and, you know, chat with you on the show. You know, thanks again for coming on here. We'll definitely
Thanks for having me.
We're definitely going to have to do this again, you know, sooner than later and talk about some RE4 discussion. You know, because once that comes out, there'll be a lot of stuff to cover. And obviously, you know, we've been playing Resident Evil for so long. We've been playing games for so long. We talk about games every Wednesday night at around 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on The Game Complainers. And we're trying to get to 2K subs. We're on the road there, right? We're getting close over there. So
on the road there, and we're gonna have our 10-year anniversary special in what was it, a few months, right?
Yeah, and if people don't know, like I've been doing this show with him for almost 10 years, co-hosting it, and we talk about games. We talk about video game news. We talk about, you know, our grievances and our, you know, it's called Game Complainers, but it's not always us screaming and yelling. We kind of turn it up a notch on the show. It's very fun, and obviously you guys know what we're about. So you guys, a lot of guys that watch this show are watching that podcast as well. So I just want to let people know that that's where you can always find me and Perry and Frank, always discussing stuff. And it's been fun, man. It's so crazy. It's almost been 10 years already, but you know, we'll do something really special for that next year.
Really quick, the birth of that show spun out of this show.
Yes, kind of. It actually did. Yeah.
You were going to do a podcast with Richard, an actual Let's Talk numbered podcast.
Right.
Something happened. You couldn't get a hold of him. So I said, hey, I'll jump on. And they're like, no, I want to keep this like so people know who the host, know who like the people on the show are. I don't want to just throw somebody in there so they get confused. I was like, okay, but why don't we just do a show that's not Resident Evil?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, that's cool. And we just did a random show about games, and we said at the end of the show, maybe we'll just call this Game Complainer because we were
Yep.
just complaining about certain things in gaming. I think was Assassin's Creed came out and it was all screwed up or whatever.
Yeah, it was a very weird time with the console announcements and the generation changing, and there was a lot of hot takes and a lot of it was like striking while the iron was hot for gaming at the time, because there was a lot of uprise in at what was going on at that time. So I think we started it at a crazy time, and it worked out, I guess. Like, we just kind of stuck with it and have adapted over the years. Now we do video podcasts like this, and it's like, people like that now. So it's kind of one of those things, like, we've been around through all different renditions of YouTube, like we mentioned, with even channels before that. But it's a spot that we can always chat games, and you guys can always tune in over there as well. And that's why I always kind of, mention it, because some people want to hear me talk about other stuff, that isn't just RE, of course. So that's always a great time, because we talk about movies like a little bit here and there, but it's mostly games. Like, we'll talk about like releases that are coming out or sales, but if it's a movie that we really like, we'll talk about it. But 9 times out of 10, it's all gaming stuff. So it's always been fun, and it's like I said, you kind of blink your eye and damn, it's like almost 10 years go by. It's like, what the hell? And then you kind of look where we are in gaming. You're like, damn, like, we're just getting the move on with these new consoles now. So it's just like,
I can't believe that we're almost at Resident Evil 10.
that's,
If you would have
blows my
told
mind.
me that I would, hey, here's back in '96, here's Resident Evil 1, there's going to be 10 of these games. Like,
I'm like, get out of
hell
here.
out of here. They ain't making enough
Yeah.
games.
Yeah.
I mean, there's more than 10 games now, but I mean numbered entries. You know what I mean? We're almost at Resident Evil 10, which is crazy.
It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And yeah, it's something that where, I can't wait to see where this next little turn of survival horror kind of goes, and I'll be covering. By the time you guys see this, I'll probably have, live stream Callisto, or have covered it or talked about it in some degree. But this kind of kicks off the next quarter of me just kind of working really hard at covering these games and trying to have fun with them, and obviously enjoy them with you guys and chat it up. And there'll be a lot of cool stuff that we'll be discussing further. And maybe we can get you on like a round table or something. If we can get a couple people in here again, that'll be cool. You know what I mean? However we can do it, there's a multiple ways we can even get you on, like, Resident Evil 5, Mercenaries. I already have co-op locked down with someone that I owe a co-op stream to, but maybe we could do some RE6 co-op, or RE, something where we can cross promote even more.
So listen, Abo, shout out to Abo.
Yeah, shout out to Abo, longtime supporter of all of our channels.
The biggest, fattest slob known to man.
With a Silent Hill photo. Fucking,
yeah,
the
this
car.
Silent Hill Harry Mason doing some crazy stuff in a car. Abo is in his little palace in Wisconsin. Or is it Minnesota? Where, I don't know where the hell he lives.
He's from somewhere.
It's snowing right now. Well, at the time of this recording, he said he snowed in.
Holy
He's got
shit.
his little wine, his little cheese, his little soda packets or whatever. And I totally forgot what I was going to say about this guy. I'm building him up so much that I totally forgot what I was going to say.
Something about Resident Evil 5 or 6 or co-op or...
Okay, so he suggested that me and Frank do Resident Evil 6 co-op. And he's like, well, I could join you guys because there's a 4-player co-op thing. And he's like, oh, but I don't have it on this console or whatever. So, I mean, hey, if you ever want to do that, let me know.
Yeah, I mean...
Me and Frank are going to get together in person at the shop.
Oh, okay.
And do 2 Xboxes playing RE6 co-op.
That'll be
We're
cool.
gonna stream that.
Yeah, that'll be cool. I
So,
think
if you
Abba
ever
might have been
wanna
talking
join
about Versus, I think, because I think Versus is 4-player.
Whatever. I don't
So
know.
Versus is more like objective based, but like, I mean, we can always figure something out. There, even Reverse, to be honest with you, it's not the best thing out there, but to be honest, the games are quick. It's like 4-minute games. You get in, get out, and you're done. And like, you could have up to 6 people in a room. It comes with every copy of Village, so if anyone bought Village, we can already play it. It does run, it is a PS4 game. It's not like under the so it starts up as a PS4 game, but it still runs smooth and like it's not too bad if you want to kill time. Is it a great multiplayer experience? Not really, but like that's something where it'd be fun to stream, like the way you guys kind of jump on stream and play a few different games. That would actually be fun because it's cross-play, so anyone can play it, and like maybe we can get a couple people from the community in, because like I've been trying to do that more like one-on-one sessions with like people too, and that's a fun game that maybe you can try to, I don't know if it's your cup of tea, but
When they first released it, and then people got mad and they pulled it.
right.
I thought it was all right. I like the one with
Resistance.
Resistance. I thought was pretty
Right.
good. Everyone bitched about it. I was like,
See, that was more like
and I stayed
team
away
oriented.
from it for about a year.
Right.
And I was like, I'm going to just try it. I have it. What am I going to do? I tried it. And I was like, wow, I kind of like this. I thought it was all right.
Yeah,
I can understand why people don't like it, but
I didn't give it the time of day when it came out. That was just on me, just because it was like,
me too. I said,
I just
what?
missed it. Yeah, I just didn't really. I mean, I played a little bit of it, but not enough, like on the beta. But I didn't play it when it came out because we were just so done with RE3 once it was out and we covered it. It was like, let's just kind of
Right.
break from this for a little bit. But it was more like Resistance apparently was more like team oriented, and you really got to communicate. Reverse, you just jump in and you're done in 4 minutes. Right. It's like you just jump in, you kill.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like their version of Fortnite.
Right. So it is a good time waster. Can you play it more than 4 hours? Like probably not. Like you're probably going to be like, okay, I'm kind of over this after a couple hours in bursts, right? But it's still fun in a community type way. If you play by yourself, you're not going to have a good time. But if you're playing with friends or you're playing with fans, like that could definitely make it better because you can chat and just like hang out. But it's not, you don't have to think a lot. It's like you just jump in and you're not like, there's not these crazy objectives. It's not, it's not so intricate that you're like, I don't even want to play this. It's so for that, it's okay. But it's not is it worth the hype? No. Was it worth the delay? Not really. It should have launched with more content, in my opinion. It's a little light.
I thought that's what they were doing. I guess
well,
not.
They have a roadmap, so they're updating it. So they're putting like this map and this character out here, and then, but it's very slow to that. But again, it's not broken, so it's not completely broken. It runs better than how it did with the beta. So,
and I don't want to get you in trouble here, but I think they should focus on that more than XL Primal over there.
Oh no, I mean, hey, look, that's a matter of opinion. I think PvP and multiplayer games aren't for everyone. Even me, like I have a style, like I prefer a Call of Duty and a Halo.
Bro, I think XL Primal's dead on arrival.
You don't even think that's gonna get like liftoff?
No.
Wow.
And you know why? I get why they're trying to do it, because that's where games are going, games as a service.
They're trying to bring in some cash flow to that.
The problem with that game was you shit on Dino Crisis when people want Dino Crisis.
Right.
You already lost the audience.
Yeah. That's
true.
True.
Something Capcom's going to have to, they're going to get hit with that day one when they see like 5 people are playing that shit.
And that's the thing.
I don't mean to say that to be negative, but you see the outcry. When people saw that, they thought that was Regina at first.
That's
and
true.
Then I think, didn't you explain to everybody that originally was supposed to be a Dino Crisis game?
Well,
or was that somebody else?
Well, apparently, yeah, like it kind of started out as like, like they wanted to try to go back in that realm, but then they kind of switched things up. That's what they're saying. I don't know if there's a lot of weight to, kind of like, what people were saying how it was before, but that's what apparently they were saying, is that they were trying to reincorporate these, dinosaurs, but instead they use this PvP kind of like, mindset. And look, I don't think it's for everyone, and I haven't played the beta. They did have closed beta, and I just didn't, I didn't sign up for it. I didn't really have that interest. Will I check it out? Sure, I'll try to check it out if I can get hooked up with a copy. But if not, like even then, like I don't know if it's going to be my cup of tea. I just don't really think it's for.
It might be a good game, but I think just the backlash from the community, I think it's just dead on arrival. It's like people want Dino Crisis. They don't want XO.
That is a true thing. A lot of people are saying they want Dino Crisis remake.
Now, had they called that game Dino Crisis, featured Regina and a couple of the other characters that are from that universe, you would have had some sort of a shot.
Yeah.
But you know what? Maybe it's good they didn't do that, because if it did fall in its face, Dino Crisis is dead.
And a lot of people were saying, well, now they have, the assets in the RE engine for the dinosaurs for this. So if they wanted to make a Dino Crisis, they could. So could this be, so could this be, they could do it regardless. So it's like this could be leading to that. Who knows? Because Exoprimal, that comes out in 2023. It was not an exact date. But the Pragmata game that is a Capcom IP that seems more like sci-fi, that obviously got delayed, but that's still coming out. That looks a little bit more intriguing because it looks more like story-based, not multiplayer stuff. So, again, look, there's people that love Reverse. That's like their jam. There was people that really love Umbrella Corps, and that wasn't a really good game, multiplayer-wise.
I thought it was all right. I didn't like it because the
camera was stuck to your ass. It was like it was so weird. It was so janky because I forget who they developed.
Listen, I know a lot of your fans don't want to hear this, but I think Operation Raccoon City, had they brought that back properly, that game would still be playable right now.
Oh, I agree. I mean, look, I still stick up for that game. I still like it.
Look, for people that don't want to hear it, the game runs like crap on consoles. But when you play that game on PC, it's like a current gen game.
Oh yeah. If you play it on 60 frames with the Xbox, it actually is pretty damn good. Obviously, it lacks the visual, but it runs in 60 frames on the Xbox. Yeah, on the Series X and S.
Yeah, we had a good time when we were playing it. If they would have just brought that back, because that was like one of the only games that they didn't re-release again.
No.
And I felt that, hey, if they would have re-released that could turn into their next game, their next like online game. But they got a lot of backlash for it not being Resident Evil. It's like it wasn't supposed to. It was a what if
game, and it was a fun co-op shooter, and that's kind of what it was advertised. And back when I did my review, I still stand by my review to this day. A lot of people will say, "Oh man, like that was an old review." It's like, yeah, it's old, but like even 10 years later. Yeah, maybe my opinion dipped a little bit in terms of like, I don't go back to it as much as other Resident Evil games, but even then I still enjoy playing a co-op. Like playing it with you guys. If that was
their only online based game right now, that would probably take off.
Right.
Because Fortnite's a big thing right now. And I know people don't like Fortnite. I get that, but people do like Fortnite on top of
the majority of people
you
like
got
it.
Call of Duty Warzone. Capcom needs to find their online game that's just going to stick. And I think Operation Raccoon, if they rework it and do it right and stick with it, because it seems like Reverse, they're going to jump off the boat at some
people
point.
Want Outbreak Online, right? They want a new version of
They can
Outbreak.
even do that.
Like co-op.
They can even do Outbreak.
That's a big
but
request.
They had to be invested in it.
Yeah.
I don't think they're invested in Reverse. I think Reverse was like, here's something a little extra, and then people got mad. And they were like, oh, we have to actually like treat this thing good now.
Right.
And they're like, I think they're half-heartedly doing that. I think eventually that's going to phase them.
And that's the thing too. It's like it's very weird to see where they're going to go.
They need that games as a service game, and I think that either Outbreak or Operation, one of those two titles is going to do you in good. But they have to put all their time and energy into it. I don't know if they're ready for that right now because they're working on all these other games. But if they get a team together that can focus on that and work on that while they're making all these other games, great. But I don't know.
Yeah,
these are just ideas I'm spitting out there. It's not facts. It's not.
No,
I don't know anything.
It's all cool to just kind of like just kind of shoot the shit about that stuff because again, a lot of people like.
I'm wrong. I'll admit it. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, look, if Exoprimal comes out and if it's a bop, if it's a banger of a game, then I'll say it. You know what I mean? I'll be like, yo, this is pretty cool, but I don't.
Yeah, well, I'll say that.
Yeah, it's like, well, I'll say it. Like it's not I think that the big thing with this is that a lot of people, like you said, they want Dino Crisis, they want Outbreak Remake, they want like a bunch of things that like they just wonder if they're ever going to kind of invest in that idea. So I think a lot of times they might have to go through Exoprimal to get to a Dino Crisis or to get to an online game that works for them. Maybe Exoprimal will be that. I don't know. It doesn't look like my cup of tea. But who's to say? You know what I mean? I haven't played the beta yet, so I could have. I just didn't play it. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, man, that's gonna wrap it up for this show. Thanks again for coming on here. And again, where can people find you on YouTube?
I'm the Game Complainers on YouTube.
There we go.
You're there every night on Wednesdays.
Yep.
We try to go on at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Sometimes we go on 11:30 p.m. Eastern.
Right.
We go on late. We got to get situated. We have lives. We can't, just show up at 8 o'clock at night. I got family I got to be with until they go to sleep.
Yeah, back in the day, we used to pre-record them, and we used to record them at 11 a.m., 12 p.m. Yeah, back then, like that was back before a bunch of shit changed. So
now we go live. We got the chat room. So if you're watching, stop by for sure. But yeah, man, just as you get older, things happen. Like Frank has a family. He's got a kid.
Absolutely, yeah.
He's got to wait till the kid goes to sleep. You got to wait till his wife goes to sleep. Same thing here. I got to wait till my family goes to sleep.
Right.
I got to jump on here. So, yeah, we go on late, but hey, we dial it up. We make stupid jokes. It's as if you would hang out with us at a bar or something. I don't drink or anything, but we say funny stuff. We do funny things like you're hanging out with us.
Yeah.
But we dial it up. We try to be outlandish and funny for no reason. A lot of people take that as a negative, and it's like, dude, we're just trying to have fun.
Right. It's like
just relax.
Yeah, we're just having a good time, and that's why we do the show. So yeah, I'll put the link down below, or you can just click the at Game Complainers, because now YouTube does that where that's the handle. So in the title,
I love that.
There'll be so you literally just click the at Game Complainers right in the title of this video. It'll take you right to the channel.
You
it's
know
better
why
than
I
the
like
link.
that?
What's that?
Because if someone's messing with you, you know exactly who they are and where they are.
Yep.
Now.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So,
yep.
It's great stuff.
Yeah, man. So that's awesome. So thank you guys for all the support. Thank you, Perry, again for coming on.
No problem. Thank you for having me. Thank you for asking the questions, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for the questions. Thanks for the supporters. And take care. And we will catch you in the next episode of Let's Talk Resident Evil. Take care.